Else. Yeah. What were the impacts of the global prohibition?
It was like Afghanistan, and then there was like the disease impact to like public health.
You're reading this. Abbott was the same as the Kentucky quarters, but that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the like AIDS and that's in there.
Let me just call him. Just call him. Tell him. Make sure that he told me the same as the Kentucky quarters.
Yeah.
Let me just go. And just send me that while you're.
Yeah, I just sent you that.
Thank you.
Nope. Yeah, so just wanted to confirm something for Arjun. So is that the impression that what you're saying is 1HC1 drugs is the same as quarters? The quarters
In terms of impact.
In terms of impacts. Is that correct? Is that correct?
So Indo-Pac.
Yeah, okay, that's good. I'll just give you that advantage right now. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm just gonna send you that one too, advantage so you can know exactly.
What is it? 11:15.
No, it's.
Oh, is it not?
It got pushed to 11.
11:25.
Okay. I was just like, yeah, we need a few more minutes.
All right, yeah, I just sent that advantage.
Okay, so this is like the version.
Yeah, I just straight up copied that out.
I appreciate it also.
I'm not worried about it. You see. What's that? I said, I'm leaving it up for 10 seconds. They don't have to like configure anything. 11:25. Hello? Hello? Awesome. All the caffeine. Already. Just getting upstairs.
I lose this week. Well, in the first half, you didn't even have points.
The one nobody wants.
Nobody.
$16.
somewhere in the middle.
What?
No. Sit up and rock your shit.
It's hard to say with certainty, but it's consistent with other diseases. In a second, I just closed that.
It's already open.
Brutal. I'm gonna recount. You might get it. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, I was looking for 10 minutes for the first one. I was like, oh.
You close that one?
Yeah.
And then.
I wrote this on paper.
Yeah.
Okay, where did you put that? Where did you put these?
It's in your treats.
Perfect.
You might have to change it. It's so good. It's this one. Yeah.
Yeah, they're.
Having fun.
Oh, to part of the Dropbox package. That's what we talked about. Potentially warrants. I want you to take I want to make sure the shit's.
Yeah, I applied for it.
Is anyone gonna be out of the judges gonna be sitting here? Any of the judges?
One person will be sitting next to you, I think.
Okay. Did you want to pull up another shift for both of you?
Yeah. You guys. Wait, yeah, so real simple, some asshole is just on the fucking comments going off, so I blocked him. It's very simple, hit the flag, block user.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put pens down.
I might actually just given that there's
Yeah. I mean, if you know how to shmurda, that's going down right now.
No, I do not.
If you know how to shmurda, it's going down.
Unfortunately, that is
In
not
the
biggest. What is the panel? Does anybody know?
I showed off how I know how to shmurda.
What was your name?
Seth. Well, my name is Garrett. Seth, yeah. Becca Steiner.
Okay, Becca.
Leah Shulsky. And Dylan. Is it Quigley or is it Paul? I think it's Fun. Who's your fifth one? Is it Quigley or Paul? Quigley. The French Quiglers.
You said Seth Cannon?
Yep.
Okay, Seth Cannon, Becca Steiner, Lincoln Garrett.
Leah and Quigley.
Leah, how do you spell her last name? Moculuski. Michalski.
Let me Facebook this real quick.
CZULSKI. Right, got it. And yeah. Who else? Dylan Quigley?
And Dylan Quigley.
I think so.
This will just take a second. I just want to double check some of this. This is what you want me to write down.
We're good. Solid. Good shit.
Okay. I don't know. Could you?
I do not have a pen. I'm sorry.
Can't say. I got
I was like, oh yeah.
I was gonna go down and see what's happening.
Whoa.
Looks like nothing is going on. It actually looks like
No,
everything.
you need to take a second.
What? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Katie,
can you get up? Yeah.
can I sit here or are you sitting? Okay. Do you want to just sit in the back?
I thought I was going to go downstairs. Turns out I'm not.
And it's actually what I was going for.
You know what my head sign to that is?
Who's here? That's like this. Who's this?
All right, so never mind. We'll go back to the street.
What's good, everyone?
Buddy.
I'll take one.
You're not.
Well, I'm sitting with the panel.
Oh. All right, who are we missing? Seth, Eugene, Gannon. Miles is a wandering.
He's in the bathroom.
Sure. Pappas is wandering. Welcome to the college LD tournament called the Franklin R. Shirley Classic.
We have 72 people, 76 people. Are you actually going to be looking open speakers on here?
I'll put that on there. Keep it on the leg train. Keep it on the leg train.
You seem to be gearing up for something big.
Keep it on the leg train.
Who wants to sort the record?
There it was. Time to begin.
I feel like we're very far away.
Okay, let's fix that.
In light of the camera. I didn't realize that was a camera.
How about this?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna need to create some space. Yeah, they're gonna need space. I think Seth is on. Seth's sitting there. That's gonna need. You go back. All right. Where's Seth?
Seth is out there. I was gonna get locked out.
Did we tell Seth? Did we tell Seth that? There he is. Hey. Yes. Okay.
Jared, can you do me a favor? On the back of the snowball, there is a setting. Move it from 3 to 1.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us for the final round. This has been a long day for most of you, but not nearly as long as it has been for our participants and our judges. So before anything happens, a round of applause for the judges who have agreed to do the final round for everybody. This is the 2014 Franklin R. Shirley Classic, often referred to as the NDT of the first semester. Hopefully that will be the case as we have incredibly good teams before you, excited to be here and to do some debating. On the affirmative, we have, who's that? Michigan. Yes. On the negative, we have Northwestern. Round of applause. I will get out of the way. With the 1AC ready to begin?
Just send an email.
Perfect.
Can I jack y'all stands?
Yeah.
Ours broke right there. Because it's all Sugo's fault. Thanks.
We will have a 5-round decision in exactly 3 hours and 15 minutes from now.
So I'm setting this timer for 8:50, so I don't forget to read the plan text. So when it beeps, all right, it's usually done quite a bit. Let me know once you have what you need.
Yeah.
Awesome. That is all set?
Great.
Advantage 1 is the war on drugs. War on drugs fuels recent Afghan instability and undermines the region. Pearl 11 for Afghanistan remains dangerously unstable. Cultivation support shops will be seized inside the Vienna South. The trade generates 3 billion in revenue production and all-time high last year. The trend doesn't look like it will reverse. There are no other income sources that can produce account profits. Narcotics against Taliban first are getting around Afghanistan, but no alarming increase in search of related violence. As long as commanders are able to fund themselves through this trade, this one is sufficient profit for the illicit economy. There will be few incentives for peace. Still up to Pakistan and empowers jihadists spelled by Brown Act. In Afghanistan, the Taliban trades institutions by driving vast profits and will get government. The illicit economy threatens civil defense. We're also the clubs of the government Taliban government control. Destabilize Pakistan, both the GF's weakness and resolve the Pakistan government counter narcotics direction. That should submit the bonds between the population and the child and further discredit the government giving accession and cultivation. Bullshit their first Pakistan is most worse than gas will be Huntington. The Pakistan escalatory nuclear conflict reveal 1019. Texas rights to the terrorist and the conflicts good for kill the trade property crisis and other things from the maritime clashes. Escalating Kashmir and the front line witness the Red exchanges in the decade Modi fully disarmed the demonstration resolve Modi. This canceled diplomatic ties to Pakistani and Kurd. Other the Kurd will put the nuclear force on higher alert if Clinton had not persuaded share after war would have escalated to nuclear exchange to be government by the tyranny of the deep state India. In fact, set up war weapons and delivery systems, de-escalatory ladders, more traffic pumping, flow tags, legal limit for compromise use of local individual, we come back to follow extinction, chapter 11, due to an Indian special work like someone down, strong incentive to use the arsenal early CNC, we disable the offenders, come back, decreasing likelihood, either would follow negotiations, and will professionals for what can do for school reductions, but regional nuclear war, nuclear weapon, less survival and jeopardy, detonation would prevent tons of these would every DOs on this would legion, would food charges, and widespread of people, punitive approaches, collapse Afghanistan, Afghanistan 13, failure of Afghanistan, Europe, presidents, one of the greatest, that's a long-term civil discrimination that falls out by ideological diversion, terror, organization, torture, perpetuates, impunity, corruption, type of conviction, great eventually, insurmountable Trump, this, raise the risk of disease, including AIDS and evidence, as I said, soccer, Afghanistan, to look at other models that ran, over 50% of the country, drug control, but instead, as a prevent public health, awareness, not to halt the epidemic, but they reintegrate uses back into the county areas where the country settled, arms reduction improvements were observed as possible to use primarily as a public health issue. The U.S. needs to encourage capital to adopt a broader approach. These efforts fail Afghanistan will remain narco-state and exporter of deaths to the rest of the world, especially true for marijuana. U.S. market key Goodman 14, with gas in the future, Afghanistan simply rely on Afghanistan's world's largest market again, with more profitable than no EU-friendly recognized industry. You'll look at the gains of the trafficking, under trade funding and services project civilization. If they agree to send search would not have money to buy one with the international committee when I have just spent hundreds of millions on food eradicating. I can prove someone legalizing is far more feasible than a democratic system. The sole source of the money is the U.S. prohibition when the country finalizes national marijuana industry civil needs will be met. Explicit TSA removal and subsequent state regulations key to impede new drug policy one. How to change the U.S. maybe the link comes for the epidemic that promise led to the global erosion. This war part also this encouraging government to experiment with regulation marijuana. They're listening to the the U.S. Standing at the forefront for information by implementing policies when there's no nation, the U.S. perform prohibition regulation. The officials are calling on the U.S. to do more. There's growing move to research marijuana. Allows the U.S. work on certain list insurance and opportunities to bridge for drug pricing policy experimentation. Building regulation will cover demur image and repair relations because the work is carried by U.S. men. As some legality that the international committee could reach it's about any drug controlled by marijuana will be a marijuana representative mechanism to enter into experimentation used with considerable influence. So it's no surprise that it's got the relevant policies result in the majority calling adversity. If the U.S. leads to more tolerant policies, the majority loss of complete reformation is too aggressive to succeed against virtually more moderate peaceful approach connects the catalyst. If the U.S. was serious but the gun must remove marijuana from the list. This one is a step in the so there's reform legislative navigation responsibility, legal regulation marijuana, to reduce the burden on law enforcement, to refocus efforts towards reducing our broad U.S. relation with complete legalization would provide assistance to governments regaining control of liberty dominated by search groups against groups with a major source of funding. Marijuana is an actual mechanism that for constructive reform that through a domino effect can transform the prohibition regime. The use will capitalize by removing marijuana from the list of federally banned substances, setting the stage for policies that are effective. Existence in the CSA sends big signals. Getting 14 marijuana does not belong to the CSA. Any schedule is the rest of state laws and federal level to separate substance changes federal law. Not how much is North around the CSA provide the inspection, match the phone errors, rescheduling, and access is for district Obama only an opportunity to see in the CSA. Well, then the CSA is not a practical regulatory framework and it can be used to roll back access. Right now, every big can be indicted different. Not that they say you didn't know there's time to change marijuana law. This means remove marijuana, rewriting the statutes, key guardian 14 till DC rewrites and still touching the legalization. The rest of the world is not going to be executed the will and their policies being inserted. Both in the U.S. the rate of the made no whatever their laws which pass about cannabis this year the one's not running. This one thing that is matched between DC's rules and the rule of law is observed cast a thick fog of confusion so long as both the President Congress and anything that for strike from rewriting the federal statute will remain open to any less liberal future occupant of the White House to turn back the clock. Advantage two is the FDA counters. FDA credibility are increasing now. The reinserting a strong world key to farm industry successful in 14. A strong FDA crucial with the success of any R&D credibility makes with the accusation of critics that drugs are assessed by the people manufacturing the poorly designed trials unless we have a well-respected FDA. Such challenges are accepted as fact. Some charge that the industry holds events when a company files an NDA. The FDA approval list updates included thus credibility. The farm industry is directly connected with the credibility of the FDA. Should the public believe the FDA is inadequately doing its job, they will publicly consider the medicines that are not what they are made out to be formed as biggest challenges improving its reputation. Its reverse causal it implicates overall industry innovation. Back to 7 reductions that would credibility of the agency, increase the already tremendous risk cost and timeliness in the drug development process. Hurt the industry. FDA's credibility crisis could affect our drug development. R&D programs are the only places feeling the negative impact from the FDA's credibility. Get the venture capital communities looking at deals through lens. Pharma supports resilience. Sullivan 11 pharma companies drive future economic growth. No other sector has the capability to drive innovation. Each job supported 6 other sectors, but Shell report highlights contribution to key areas of importance to our company innovation. This sector grows, and even in tough times, that deploys tech generate comparative advantages. It generates by exports that boost the economy. Has a strong supply chain that drives growth through multiplier effects and curves capital flow. Sustained growth and productivity of the economy would greatly impair by pharmaceuticals are a key contributor to prolific R&D opportunities in a market. A distribution system and other sectors of central importance to life sciences economy losses and revenues will be reflected in a broad range of sectors. The impacts of global war decline causes lash out dates 14. It can happen again. The story is the precariousness of globalization, interdependence, made war possible. It's quite the opposite conclusion proved to be the case given fragility. Others the levers of make war and winnable dynamics of the 1914 re-emerging economically declining power. One is used finances weapon after 2008 institutions fear dangerous weapons. The threat of systematic disruption generates uncertainty. No one can know what the questions would escalate. There is a temptation to roll the dice, even though the game may be fatal. State legalization signals a politicized FDA. Only federal action allows a strong FDA role at E10. The current efforts again legalize marijuana through ballot seriously. The FDA authorized process of preventing safety pharma drugs must be approved by the FDA. The drug approval process can not be circumvented in formal states to be expanded in a method that uplifts and regulate critical protections under the national drug legislation efforts to bypass the FDA and monitor public health only, discipline, systematic, and accurate trials can establish whether there is any medical value. The ballot initiative plus great medicine by popular vote before violent farm with their field was fraud with herbal medicines. The FDA system is being undermined by marijuana initiative sites. Not on both sides of the issues, and more research needs to be done. The federal government is all but shut down trials until the federal government realizes marijuana will be fought at the local levels. It sets a precedent, legal certainty. Key green 11 is DA rate that IRS harassment continue in state marijuana. Farmers that profitability of cannabis and provision most of safety 9% of any medicine should depend on use of scientific scrutiny. Now, other ones that allow rights by individuals to lack the application along to circumvent the approval sets a dangerous precedent, puts us on a slippery slope. Aquaculture and food-based biotech are inevitable. FDA credits key to efficacy and to feed global population. German 11. The U.S. has been importantly to biotech advances prevention to help countries and farming to dead have provided help this level of evolution of the U.S. has been providing a critical based regulatory approach is one of the most sustainable forms of protein in space. The role of biotech and agriculture represents one of the key tools to enable humanity to expand protein production. The amendment sense best is time-based regulatory oversight of the FDA, something to political, the political and person signals that the U.S. may see its leadership position. Biotech is vital between the one of the present and the future. And period that the U.S. has stayed the course of the second round, letting politics interfere with time-based regulatory system. The disease envy of the world. The U.S. can serve as a role model in the use of biotech and natural information exchange to cause disease spread, terrorism, economic collapse around the biggest obstacles of this beneficial for food crisis, gas government, close to futures, good rate, attack global civilization instrument, faster than civilized, the resulting inflation was stress on the government, international to break down and ever increasing with the main threat to our national security is failing states, failing governments can no longer provide food security, failing states are the source of terrorist weapons and refugee threatening stability, ever global civilization depends on functioning the open states, the global spread of disease, the managed monetary system, the control terrorism, the system for controlling disease, human the internal of states, disintegrate their fall threaten this global civilization itself, aquaculture, self global food country, prevents deforestation, straits are 14 more headed towards the breakdown of food systems, therefore, going to nourish the billion, then on this planet more and more protein is going to have to come from aquaculture, effective efficient ways are pretty protein from environmental standpoint is very efficient. It's takes up 4% now. Water stuff is the use of agricultural weapon 30% used not to be as regularly, but to feed the pig. One of the efforts says that agriculture is driving massive deforestation, deforestation, extinction should be an 11 human activities causing to the rate 1,000 times greater than those that would have occurred naturally. This behavior is upsetting the delicate ecological balance of which all life events that have an destruction by deforestation, destroy destruction is primarily responsible for mass disease to the world species. The opposite the people fully covered that these things will happen before closing a treating disease and threatening humans above they would recognize the current rates by the first and nothing less than a slowly evolving emergency. Do you want me to read this next scenario or move on?
Next scenario.
Okay.
No. What's the next scenario?
Let's keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
Plan mandates FDA regulation of marijuana. Column 2. Drug legalization tells market availability. The trade will become legal. Manufacturing, transportation, sale, purchase, possession, uses any other prescription, non-prescription drug approved by the FDA. The FDA seems the natural regulator of legalized drugs because the FDA regulates almost every object placed into the body. FDA when sugar comes into the majority. This is how the FDA regulates aspirin. Congress must give the FDA authority to regulate its illegal drug. Adelson 95. Congress could rework the census for treatment of marijuana, allowing the FDA to regulate FDA. A complete important role in straightening out and misinformed public health and drug experts and not include marijuana. Is that blah because it is said to be addictive and hazardous. It would make more sense to give the FDA the authority and resources to regulate marijuana than to continue vesting authority in bodies like the Congress and DA that show no ability to rationally handle the problem. The very fact that marijuana is illegal makes it difficult to gather info about its effects. Marijuana how can be placed under FDA control? It be ashamed of marijuana potentially legalized, but we're still at the mercy of manufacturers with no direction. We should not continue to have their constantly disable work against critical problems go unaddressed. We must learn the issues of alcohol prohibition. Thus, the plan the United States federal government should make legal nearly all marijuana, prohibit public controlled substances acting in the United States and allow Food and Drug Administration regulatory discretion.
We'll take some pride. We're about to win on the
Can't blame you. I thought there was like a scenario that didn't exist.
Yeah, what were you thinking?
Because it was at one point, and like I just didn't look at the next tag.
It's a song secret.
Yeah.
Does the plan fee out the states or the?
The plan just says
or
the
just
Fed
the
go.
I guess. Yes.
Okay, we're good. 8:32.
Okay. What part of the one I see says like FDA cred loan now? Is it just the Lamatina card.
As well as the Evans card that talks about current ballot initiatives.
You don't have it.
The CRS report from 2010.
Eddie. Okay.
Eddie, I'm sorry, Eddie.
Where does this speak to the overall credibility of the FDA?
It's medicine by popular vote.
Cool.
The system is being undermined by marijuana initiatives.
The system's not the FDA though. That's not.
Yeah, no, but it's talking about the approval process, quote, being circumvented, and it's talking about the legal status.
I guess I'm just wondering, like, apart from the one line in your card that says allowing cannabis to circumvent FDA approval sets a dangerous precedent and puts us on a slippery slope, citing some anonymous person.
The FDA is no longer the gold standard for medical applications.
So, because one drug has emerged compared to the
it's kind of
thousands that the FDA regulates, it's no longer the
it's kind of
and that's established by
it's kind of
Tara Green, the writer for
If
Natural
I can
News.
clarify, our advantage is also about the process by which drugs go about getting approved. And when state legalization proceeds, it sends a signal that the FDA is politicized because it's not going through an exclusive FDA process in which Congress has granted that authority to the FDA. And that the FDA being the gold standard is.
Explain to me the link between like the credibility of the FDA and its ability to regulate aquaculture. Just like walk me through the steps.
You want me to take down all this, or do you?
Sorry, I just have to plug that in. Yeah, so the argument for FDA key to that is that if FDA is not credible and is seen as politicized, then the oversight it uses is no longer effective, so we can't be an effective model for responsible biotech and ag tech.
So is the only internal link effective model?
I mean, it's about the agency's credibility.
Okay, so like, would you make a claim that the regulation by the FDA of biotech in the U.S. itself would be ineffective as a result of lack of credit?
We say FDA as an institution will no longer be effective without addressing.
And I'm wondering, like, what is the implication of that lack of effectiveness for its ability to regulate the industry itself?
A, domestic cost competitiveness, and B, the degree to which it shapes international
unpack the first part.
So the JIRMA evidence says that when the FDA is incredible, other companies who want to go and make things, if they see the process as being politicized, it takes them longer to do so.
Okay,
and
great.
it increases their perceptions of upfront
if they
cost.
see the process as politicized, it takes them longer. Like, explain that.
Yeah, because they think the FDA is just going to like arbitrarily do stuff.
And why does that make the process longer?
Why does it make the process longer?
Yeah, they submit the approval to the FDA, and the FDA says
they can't make business decisions when they don't know what the FDA is going to do.
And that's based off of one drug.
Yeah. And the process that the plan submits.
Your real evidence says that there was an attack by Let on.
That's not completely correct. It says there was an attempted attack, but India thwarted it. However, there's a high likelihood of future attacks. It won't be thwarted.
Why won't they be able to thwart those?
Just because there are too many actors and instabilities on the rise.
If there are so many actors, what is the propensity for instability being intrinsically necessary to stop those terrorist attacks?
I mean, the reason those actors can move with impunity, cross the borders, get weapons, etc., is basically like you're basically asking why does instability come from?
Do you want this?
Can you just check the CPU? Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah. I can integrate that fine. I just don't want to skip one of the things. I see where you're going with this. I just wasn't sure if you want to. That's cool. Try to get along.
What other things you want? What other ones?
Oh, yeah, I think there's a pretty decent chance of that. I agree with that.
Okay, 6:30. Mike. Okay, it's 5. Oh, 4. Sorry. And then the FDA advantage. And then the other advantage.
Cool. Thank you.
No, it's the reverse. It's FDA and okay, everyone good?
The critique legalization, transplanting, inequality of war on drugs into marijuana market, pulls 13 marijuana samples and plan allows drugs to be captured, listed, allows for properties to run. It is also the object of properties process of movement. Marijuana legalized, certain leader drop in prices decline, prices decline, the line for nice apparatus will opposition capture the right, regulation will reckless accumulation is supposed to be produced from the regulatory states would replace the community state as coordinator, drug war close to marijuana and the world power group of that, the little about the state can marijuana prohibition reducing lecture, when a drug war enables inequality of rationalized legalized market continues to own form of structural violence, in fact, that street dealing is the only income in many communities just require any legalization instead, when things more radical community background is projectized as neoliberal fear politics result in massive structural violence and towards growth routine, the U.S. has become cultural war violence, effortlessly consequences include mind numbing, military taxi, officers by that human nature, police real life here, ideological state, partners are well defined emergencies measure, reference for taking policy, cultural apparatus, circulating, validated. Democratic process to be found suspectful, reinforce to fear of the other security, focus security, versus well for those who those forces the rest of the reality, extreme violence, and every other engaging crime, finish show fast spectacular violence, reveals it, as well, incentive of burden of laboratory, increased visible market driven order driven by financial leaders, supporting all ethical considerations, capital accumulation, the utter annihilation of the other becomes normalized, violence, can all be defined as safe functions of market and national violence, normal population, exceptional equality, generating violence, generally normalization of risk and security for being organized, for the production of violence, instead of power violence, instead, no framework of fear consequences, increasing equality stuff, we have to explain indifference, mass culture, you will call signs of face, police say violence, expose the wars, come to the rest of society, extreme effects, never got chance to get paid away for it, vote negative to open up the face to resistance against neoliberalism, and to political activism, turn into a fantastic from all parts, will keep keeping the slide is a first step for something that I resemble globalization, human facing extension, never happens to international, essential, based on human democracy goes beyond legal, research colony points in the right direction, arguing directly to the political foundation, where constant readjustment of that, and question established towards that movement, may make it country down here, political sense of movements, is that may not be controlled, central, but they open up possible to establish the goal system, way to political awareness, and either because of the north struggle, needs to emerge from struggle for civil society. The fact that this struggle is not ongoing stock track from potential next office politics, Iran deal is coming upon, will hold up professional effort to real negotiations with Keys, key halls, negotiators are quickly approaching the line to reach an agreement that free strong secure program to help the open rising new techniques could tower conferences, you could probably think around the policy about with veto with the friendly agreements are well to get close to being able to short staff. There would be nothing to challenge veto, but numbers of tightening effect running new good policy break for your style that we hard fight with the press will win the plan. Rex Obama PC dot well, why not? And federal prohibition such with serious now possible generally sex politics proposed liberalization was becoming down labels become big down the historical complicated amongst the ratio of the intent with last marijuana was possible to deal with PCC to hold up a veto proof majority view channel of 6. Along to veto after the override, possibly plenty of Democrats will be able to send publicly, we want to do energy to send the price. Bill Obama have to pay her phone administration operators to be, based on the Obama 2 years negotiation collapse, caused nuclear war, Stevenson, and 13 negotiating for Toronto, continue to fill near on Dr. Obama, often gone to see Saudi returning, using nuclear club non for chatter, will be drawn into a pair to negotiate bombing 6 weeks later, but not in the best, or community hope for that relaxation things around, well, making better off additional capability. Iran has leadership prepared to talk next office, the counter tax, the United States ought to propose amendment to the allows parties to the amendment to make legal nearly all marijuana prohibited under the Controlled Substances Act in the United States to be made legally binding on the United States in the event of substance. In the event of the amendment to direct the United States should maintain prohibitions on marijuana necessary for compliance with the Convention. The United States should allow the Food and Drug Administration regulatory discretion after the fact. The 50 states should freeze their marijuana legalization in the states that have legalized should prohibit it, and the FDA should announce offer all necessary support, including but not limited to technical, financial, and legal support for companies going through the FDA approval process. The United States should take all necessary steps to promote aquaculture, biotechnology, and support the pharmaceutical industry, including but not limited to providing necessary funding for development of new projects. The planned unilateral legalization size of U.S. treaty obligations that costs ILA broadly the complex process is key. And the changes in marijuana policy open the door to improve international legal system, the treaty strike clause of political system of peace and endure. They cannot change conditions states to legalize criminal for investigating national multiple limited economy by that for the implementation of uniform from committees louder, what we can national forward strengthen the marijuana laid from drugs, Europe's good reduction habitation reform, the non-healing health regulation during the treaty, be monitored from the drug U.S. place, its garbage accessible broaden for us, to become reduced, become something early on me, open international convention of drug use, marijuana, for good change, message about deputy people to the international system that maintain new campaign against ISIS, Ukraine crisis, underscore the importance of multilateral security commitments, I love remit is growing survival, economic security, policy, support for global warming, sanction on Russian terrorism, military interventions, U.S. relies on international agreements to legitimize it, and apply joint acts against drugs and marijuana, and their countries are highly visible and offer opportunity to demonstrate adaptation through legal channels around the internal change beginning competition would reform America's commitment to adaptation, present the question, the counter-treaty up to a weak international order of damage recognition. The plan requires denunciation, which collapses the treaty. The process of the counterplan's key, newly tailored whole. Effective and true attendance regulation group, like generic support for repeatedly limited resistance towards treatment. This would like to be found to take rules included passed by officers of community defense, passed by English or genealogy by generic group, last month's favorite. That's going to engage possibly over the state, right? Open to you amendment, accessible crime, blocks, fusion, substance, need to be simplification, and institution such possible since denunciation of treaty would lead to its demise. This would be possible drug treaties to white lines on the way to great sufficient amount of role at Congress, efforts in international treaties is important. That's true. Would be careful of supervision via denunciation where you're such to it. Create more general flexibility within your treaty as a whole. Now the treaty DA, current U.S. policies complying with the single convention of legalization breaks U.S. adherence on right all ILA benefit between official and the federal statute made very much of it. Whereas international use to maintain the coal mine system treaty obligation, the FSS obligations, high flexibility, their initial on state legalization makes sense to justify the possibly Colorado, Washington, Colorado strict legalization, but many states adopting the Congress or business of the law in Colorado. They spend a lot of change in front of marijuana. The states are running treaty obligation. We need to measure up international U.S. search and compliance. Flexible interpretation to request more states legalize the gap. The fact treaty of 6 million got to be diverse. Views something new as a policy around the agreements and causes the U.S. is strong and with great caution. Norman institution-based global cooperation is key to great power stability. Heard intent question is the nature of listening to great power stability. Defenses which intends for cooperation based on similarity, constitution, strength, national non-partnership institutions, and global north, including international global power, pay, but less arms and more. On geopolitical platform expansion, committing more campus order, emergency character, thermal thing, not as multi global power, similarly master new, global challenges, the managing existential independence is key. Interventionary cooperation, combination between great powers. The case, there's no aquaculture's impact. It's inevitable. The FDA is not the only way to do it. No food shortage, go United populations for durable country. The alternatives in future involving starving higher food supplies are up to 2810 and produce hunger monsters right the population developing or suffering chronic hunger from 37 to 70% despite 87% population increase, no risk of resource for solution and people left not supporting local tech and capital increase productivity human countries very similar to we don't want that card strap. No impact to economic decline. You guys are 14 animals. Asserted that crisis will lead to states that use force reverse their worst arms of great power degradation, such as the right average total. These look 2012, the same suggests 70 state balance time. As the military expansion studies for recession, not true violent conflict, has not generated connections to national or ethical solution growth causes war trainer or two. We remain determined to increase living standards, nothing more guaranteed than increasing conflict. More than all people are within our state of conflict, recipe for asking conflict over materials should go wars, we fought over economic goods, warfare, increase global capital economy with wars, occur border and exchange wars, and that will the expansion war. This long term expansion wars can be seen in bureau graphic research situation, right balance on and automated support of the prosecutor American review on the ethics of weapons extinction chase down 96 during 2020 system predicts world war. This is when the worst occurred in the past competition will go into multiple districts on arrival will be a death or may not strike war will well with economic sanctions kind of during most struck wars occur in the optimization desire utilize military force. The wars cost low statements remain with war revenues low statements are likely to lead to more for war revenues high.
All of their shit is inevitable globally, like biotech stuff.
Yeah, all of their biotech, etc., is inevitable globally, so there's no way the U.S. is key short-term. Collapse of global economy is the only way to avoid catastrophic warming, delay, loss, and catastrophic emissions. 12.13, services, paradise, stress, insufficient, new sourceable, expand, focus on time, running out, reduction of emissions without hard on the kind of major production, and possible production, as well as carbon emissions, lots of emissions, security, make these certain rapidly scales of the networks, from secondary production, maybe that's become growth, and certainly come to unite rules solely, or collapse rapidly, usually make collapse more likely capacity to repeat massive facilities for response to always have been reduced faith on the global system is weakened, still made possible to avoid extreme climate change before factors locking humanity 46 to fear economic climate change, which without GG enough, you can emerging climate change. The other advantage, or do you want this last part? Okay. Oh, last word. Okay. Growth sustainable Sherman 700 scientists. Unsustainable Sherman 700 scientists. Transformation health for environmental infrastructure. Green contact. The organization of humanity. And the equal of the U.S. free content media. The equal services economic stability. Economic party. Use of land. Water, forest, research, technology. Receive debt. Ecological services. No future. Growth sustainable growth. Stocks more inclusion. Consumer society will increase possible diseases. Only million providing exceeding capacity growth. Detox for Afghanistan. Plans on not and the overall prohibition approach. Build in 14 Americans. I'm moving towards legalization of cannabis illegally. Is a good thing, but it means outside that's war, drugs, disaster, but chronic cannabis traffic. As you cocaine is the culprit. Its legalization is not here. Not American harm reduction has to mean a reduction of violence and limited legalization is feasible, but not help. No window pack war escalation after 2 on or close to your bar. She said the news have vastly overstated their substance. Numerous factors were possibly needs to meet that as it's also vaccine for taking retaliation. News all repacks and will not ensure culture and American prevention of CNC has been checking no Pakistani class doesn't go without 13 and conscious to prediction on northern east Pakistani likely to make through political computers goes again. Say class for institutions of Pakistan state are robust in the conditions which they operate. Their evidence is about opium eradication. That's no longer the U.S. strategy in Afghanistan. Kurdish and 13 are targeted include funding for infrastructure such as roads, such as rule of law, alternative development, U.S. transition from eradication to alternative livelihood transition. At the end of Bush during Obama's eradication of London prior to just change versus eradication not occur. During alternative livelihood, U.S. legalization will not boost Afghan stability. Andrew Goodman, RM14 Goodman, also consider legalization will remove barriers to entry American and international entrepreneurs.
Park at entrepreneurs. Study for the alt counterpoint.
This goes logical for the next.
And it's a new app.
Yeah, it's a new advantage.
And a substantive plan change, so we'll do whatever we want. So that does that include kicking individual planks?
Only the like stuff about the FDA.
So
what constitutes the stuff about the FDA?
Everything like. No, I'm not gonna go.
Okay, the FDA stuff that Miles handed me, I think is what he's talking
And
about.
everything from the 50 states decrees their marijuana legalization down to the 17.
Okay, so you will defend the U.S. should allow the Food and Drug Administration regulatory discretion unconditionally, assuming you go for the counterplan?
That's part of the first one. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about this around DA briefly. Does a settlement have to be reached in the lame duck?
No.
I'm going to go ahead and amend that text right now to add if the amendment is passed. So we don't
Yeah, a full text at some point would be awesome.
You might have to wait till the 2. So
I'm letting you know now, so no 2
Yeah.
skew.
okay, well, probably some.
No, I think we should.
Let's talk about this DDEV stuff. Why should we listen to Ted Trainer?
Because he's citing some empirical studies about the
What
ups and
studies is
downs
he
of
citing?
wars, the trends of the capitalist economy giving resources to states
Yeah,
to
but
fight
like what
wars.
studies is he citing?
Empirics, maybe not
Yeah,
the
but like
studies.
what studies?
I just said empirics, so
That's just a word. That's not a study.
okay. I mean, I agree.
Well,
I
let's
don't know
talk-
exactly the studies he cites.
Maybe Holmgren. The quals are listed as founder of Holmgren Design Services. Why should we listen to him?
Because he is citing Jervis's paradox as well as
The Jevons paradox?
Jevons paradox, as well as some other.
So how would the Jevons paradox explain things like any gain from any efficiency measure, like fuel vehicle standards?
Yeah,
things
but
like
those
that?
gains in efficiency are always offset by
Always?
increases in consumption. Well, in the aggregate.
Okay, gotcha. And why wouldn't people just keep burning coal if the economy collapsed?
Our argument is there would be a mindset shift when they figure out that like all their family members are dying.
Yeah, but why would that mean no more burning coal? Like, don't they still want
Our evidence indicates that in times of crisis, it opens up space for a transformation of the political and economic system. And we're obviously going to read a shit ton more cards on that.
Okay, yeah, I gotcha. So let's talk about this treaties, DA.
Yeah.
Why is it that this issue specifically spills over to other treaty commitments?
So the Bennett card says that marijuana has kind of been the highlight of recent international law. It's been elevated above other issues. And our argument in the block is going to be that the U.S. has been a massive pusher or pushing forward with the treaty. They've been a huge prohibitionist. They're key kind of in that.
So let's switch gears a little bit. The beginning of the counterplan says the United States ought to. What's the deal with that? Like, what does the ought to mean? Is there any?
I don't think it's relevant.
Okay, it's not relevant. That's not.
I might have meant that issue.
Yeah, so has that counterplan text been sent?
Yeah, I just sent you.
I'm gonna pull that up before.
The thing I put in brackets is the thing I added in CX to be determined.
Wait, Miles, so there's 2 emails, which is the full counterplan text.
The most recent one is that full one.
1 minute ago, but then there's all the other necessary support shit from 8 minutes ago.
Yeah, I thought I included that.
You did not. So it's the previous 2 emails as the full counterplan.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's start the timer.
In the 2 empty dock?
Just creating the dock.
Okay.
You could.
Okay, let's do 2.
Okay, yeah, there's the ones here.
Done.
Down to 18. Just writing down the time for those for you.
I'm gonna take one more second.
After all that.
Okay, now I'm done. I just didn't want to forget something. Okay. War on drugs, the Food and Drug Administration, the counterplan, the treaties disadvantage, the politics disadvantage, the neoliberalism critique.
What's the first name?
War on drugs. There's no good way to position this. That works.
You could do it one.
War on drugs, FDA,
Okay.
counterplan, treaties, politics, neoliberalism.
1 second. We need to assign it. Yeah, good to go.
Okay. The plan falls over when it's wild, those great MPs no reform necessary. It's based on statute which proves the common doesn't tell the impact whether evidence is authoritative. Real says the nuclear posture is managing resource miscalculation doesn't assume TNW as Pakistan cuts are. Says insurance spill over the border. It's also about insurgencies which is a state internally lead. The opium internally doesn't matter. It's about a broader punitive strategy. The plan shifts to harms reduction model. The Afghani evidence indicates requires credibility, which is the end of the combo that they can't solve. The next argument about broader solvency. The plan spills over the Guardian evidence indicates rewriting statute is necessary to solve that. Now the FDA advantage. The Jolson evidence indicates that the credibility of the FDA is important, which the common doesn't solve the case when it's domestic cost. If the signal is politicized, it means that countries won't go through the R&D phase. Means when it doesn't spill over to international cooperation, but it's an impact to food wars. The brown evidence says that the scope of food wars is so great that it magnifies every other social problem, economic collapse, terrorism, and every other scenario for war. Dresner, wrong, Armstrong, 14, too violent. Psychotherapy for the first time in 300 years. Domestic national right on nursing consuming the world. The 7 times since 70s around the world. When everyone is every winless, peaceful, and usually in the economy. People blame everyone else while we're going to period of time. Government needs to show them that the next time there's going to be far worse than the last one. Growth sells, call out, Mark 5. The greatest globalization is managed for creating peace. Goals for the enemies, most honest over that. Turns people away from common companies, destroys governments. We're more focusing on growth. Fox's cooperation, K-Waves made up, North and 9 Congress, followed no methodology, inducing the trend curves, etc. No would be identified ways or identified by overcredit the trend, no case the evidence of Robert always pricing off are naturally correlating their other trend. Inversely, there's no statistical correlation between partisan monetary spies. Warming doesn't cause extinction, various and climate change, not going to relate to but versus not real reason that climate change is not. Certain changes are changes such as sea level rise of 6 centuries unfold given time to just for climate change, not to be ruinous or incentive trust, so would be overwhelming path that's hitting point G that doesn't solve slavery and excess emission around only. The climate change climate humans build living and the change in ancient times administered diversity, certification, increased harm strength, civilization before corn, all something conditional entirely not self-industry. Tomorrow we achieve zero emission, we still not for major catastrophe glass, non burning simplification will continue, which was unable to store carbon and water. GDEV is always wrong. Strauss and 14, the civilization is bad, we should return to simple lifestyle. It's that trainer when I differ, of course, is the assumption that power density is necessary or desirable and deep production, not peak, newly long game, source of technology, new resources, every new extraction technologies, and new affinity fast meter reactors, thorium, attempts to lay down for philosophy, terms in a process based on deeply flawed limited growth, thinking that software might assessing the poverty of the future will need ongoing innovation, prefer evidence. Their authors are short-term and ignore adaptation. Gold County and 11 are substantially representing already managed the negative impact of global warming, climate change impacts of 50 to 100 years in the future. Long-term analysis show the combination of economic growth and technology change can over decades reduce negative impacts on human beings by an order of magnitude. This combination has virtually eliminated the scalable and substantial overestimate factors that damage more obesity. Future objective estimates underestimated is the impact that studies consider technological change. Most assume they know technology will come online in Russia. Expect substantial advance and adaptive best food increase in economic development. Technological change in human capital. Now the amendment counterplan delays solvency deficit vote act and three demographic increase every year. Quickly there's only support is treated lower form finance on the end of rubber resources. See this battle through the end of these committees. The short lower form do well to learn about AA that they can have their wisdom whether it cannot be changed. Our treaty delays and be able to reform 2016 key Patrick 14 the U.S. needs to structure new policy works to retain credibility and influence the change of justice prohibition that stands does not have a change to this the UN gets loads of global drug policy of the U.S. just 2 years to go from reformer countries say no to the counterplan not the I've got 314. We shouldn't expect global prohibition just advantage blocks of countries with growing influence including Russia will allow any liberalization of drug treats as soon as it is possible. Leaders including war drugs is no longer a winner. U.S. power will begin rapidly transforming the international scene. Permutation do the counterplan. Permutation do both. Permutation do the plan in a world in which they say yes. Permutation do the plan in every other possible combination of the plans. The counterplan's a voting issue if it includes the act and seal sector and it doesn't disprove the desirability of the United States action. Of course, it debates over process instead of substance. The lack of solvency advocates for the rest of the plans is independently a voting issue. It means we can't test its overall desirability and therefore we should err heavily after against solvency. Now the 1C counterplan has screwed them out, especially since they said they can't kick it. They had the plank that allows the Food and Drug Administration regulatory discretion if it doesn't for the purpose of marijuana results in recreational marijuana usage, which obviously violates the treaty. Our 1AC evidence from 1995 clarifies that. So or it doesn't pertain to marijuana and it doesn't solve itself. None of the case because if you 50 states freeze legalization, what kind of international signal would that solve? It doesn't solve international signaling. That's wild. Getman and Guardian complete removal is critical. FDA Jefferson McDonough 2000 mission of FDA is sure the drugs are available. Recommend to remove their essential mechanism behind the ship is confined to system filter for substitute valid should lead us straight to the federal law rights and the advanced valid defining about planet medicine is another make of also kind of the plant self remains legal interpretation for problematic character system is concerns over liability without the FDA American might be purchased working there be any confidence farm alone now but 14 farmers something radical face of the concept of maximum leading on president consolidation farmers such as legalization solves certainty key back 14 months to farmer companies have an opening legal cannabis markets advanced either such as the reduction in cannabis mechanisms could be the future farmer the promise for many companies that does not want to be exposed and legal back where prohibition is on place conditionalities of voting issue destroys species strategy for the twisting the fault of the methodological argument of interaction and also causes argument of contradictions. Also if they're a flexible treaty interpretation links are true, it links to the counterplan because it does a whole bunch of shit. So if the international actors wouldn't know what to do, treaties, DAI law fails UN 14 the UN Senate system so Russia final the countries will help maintain peace and peace republic is partisan upon views black by form of source on remains as far as now so that to us an invasion George Bush rules have now reached the level of accountable between great powers collective serious not the agent of each rules on exchange maxi but on the same little trouble United States policy continue with like response to the invasion of Ukraine the status quo Link Smith and 14 tops of extraterrestrial sheets from the very hard watching over the spring matters on the head the legal background of prohibition is coming under attack. We are determined points such also countries especially the convention of their limits particularly cannabis Taylor Paxson breach the point of treaty church treaty breach torture thumper Geis and 11-2 Bush and Obama responsible for which you probably small for torture the terror section of the apparatus are responsible segregation methods violate the UN Convention against torture becoming widespread abuse itself in every state where response again about a reputation or repudiation of international law. Syria found soon 927 bombing and served without much authorization from the end of the violation of the obligation of the UN charter so does new tech content 20 the basis of innovation and changing international law as underscored by the increasing use of drone use country violation of international use of countries dominating UN justice and rights of groups all post drones use signatures and over something element is the evidence of laws change war the use of laws violates international law prior legalization key solvency deficit of the counterplan column 10 28 power brownfield shift the some of the shift the UN we must have so you accept the countries of legalization conventions cover service various I say choice doing guest from way forward in the law states and the regulatory reforms of books and more from before that mention nothing to do with cannabis law reform legal reform convention is required only prior national reform will make the process necessary and inevitable by a number of states the politics the annual Middle East war fight with and seven cross-border warfare representing countries on none of these like the reach that's not like the chaos autocracies have been more likely to desire the recent experience of the cross-border warfare neighbors will not be good to fight as much as the Saudis and Iranians can intervene in the anti-Israel regimes are share fear of insulated regional cooperation is more likely laundry list of numbers law 1117 all figures to the governor of course on the flipping course of our parties one is the president's economic agreement that interposed job credit about telling the FCC that President Obama could assume will come on the president takes executive action immigration reforms can beside themselves concerns are demanding another shutdown the right knows the shutdowns are suicidal but such as gold blessed at the end of the spectrum that one will be sure that cooler heads will prevail over how the GOP will found the Republicans were deal versus and to Obama the D is not intrinsic a logical policymaker could you both deal fail saying we're living for the actual reaching agreement maybe the Iranian says Lord is less known as whether they will actually accept the president suggest an agreement it's never sure thing to deal into what the NFL parties will start to come into the same thing happening the revolutionary could check Russian Obama is not plus the Iranians mistrust the Russians Obama won't use PC on the plan Baldwin told whatever Obama's position marijuana is anybody use political capital that's not going to be the issue that he brings up facing everything else it just is isn't a priority. It's making the changes risky. He's not going to bother either Obama vetoes or GOP backlash. And Will Collins and 11-12 backers on the agreement to after even the threat of correction. Williams said a new stage would guarantee a fraction of the coalition opponents will overcome a veto conference. The kind of trouble that can hold Heartland opponents around you. Joking out, so eventually Congress would have to act. Reports are reach reports that the Work Committee report with you and watchdogs exist here on the violating interim. A deal about feeding uranium into one of its centrifuges. Back to the counterplan for a second. If the counterplan doesn't solve the process of FDA politicization, it means that when you export funding, it isn't credible and solves none of the case. That's all the one you see Congress and statute key evidence now. Neoliberal getting better now. Cells are 14 white inequality causes with using curriculum instead of partial that cap. This must be just expanded public. Good whether not in college rights. Most of the days will set overwhelming say those data. The successful Chinese capital spreading an alternative model of the revolution. Corruption to be quality of policy conditions. State-owned enterprise is giving according to Chinese law policy would be if you failed to defend the system that assumes more freedom in both than any other, demonstrating its ability to reform itself permutation to the plan and not mutually exclusive parts of the all. They don't solve structural violence more forward than maybe inhibited incentive factors when aggression is not the extent such factors over circumstance for the getting of showing more strongly favorable oppressive man, raise poverty, raise some analysis we want to indeed governments was committed to policies that will produce a better world by all measures, even progress, given the difficulties in overcoming many of these problems and approach we're trying to solution to war for generations to come. The alternative also doesn't solve because all of the stuff in the counterplan proves that statutory change is necessary and they have no spillover. Claim to that the alt is useless are rivets in 13 apps on realistic always running critical theory realistic and dualistic critical theory remains on convincing the people in the name of which brothers speak for criticism and not checking us made the multitude of subjects over here analysis on property on a critical theory must engage what is a realistic alt could be and must elaborate a realistic photo vision pushing us that we imagine it is simply productive is useless to simply deploy existing philosophical perspectives or to compare reality. Marked at reality, I'm going to read another card on treaties. Prohibition is worse. Bear 12 use again in violation of law. That reminds us of our time of waterboarding rendition and illegal arguments with voters in Colorado and Washington reaching out. Has occurred the fact that we're having to the state law does not rectify the law. We would not solve it in ongoing reached by the U.S. on the ICCP, Geneva, which works with the NCBR and environmental programs. There was a hierarchy in law, but it wasn't any more choice. Will be a victory. Will be a victory for international law, sovereign, environmental, anti-corruption agreements, and national security. International security, and I'm going to mark this card and the other one before the process.
Okay. We'll take a second.
I marked it. It's useless. Yeah.
Okay. So on treaties, the first card of treaties by John Yu. He's part obviously Bush torture memoirs guy. Why should we listen to him about ILAW?
He's a professor at Berkeley, and obviously
He probably
instrumental in
too about violating ILAW with impunity.
Yeah, and that's probably why he thinks
So,
that's probably why he thinks it
Yeah.
fails. Like, why do we think that's credible?
Because he knows a thing or two about violating ILAW.
Okay.
Who's the hell more credible than him?
The torture argument. This is like citing like old policy. Why is cruel and unhuman? Obama doesn't
disagree. That card is from 11-2 and says the
it's
recent
citing
report.
Bush policy.
No. It says Bush policy and says that the recent changes in the month of November have implicated Obama and have put the U.S. into further violation of international law.
Refer
to UN condemns U.S. government's international criminal program of torture.
The more evidence you read on the K, his theory is about democracy and deterrence solving wars. What part of the app do you think does that?
Our claim is just that you can't solve structural violence. We haven't made a claim that we necessarily solve it better, but our is just like the alt does shit.
Why is the alt the quote that Moore has? If we press a button to end poverty, racism, or neoliberalism?
Yeah, Bleecker 2002. Just like we got to debate some stuff and be some hippies.
Not pressing
and
a button. Okay. FDA regulation.
Press the button and no more neoliberalism. Are you
kidding? The FDA regulation of the counterplan. Sorry. So you made this argument in the counterplan that's like the FDA regulating plank is not about marijuana. Is that just because it was like separated from the first part of the counterplan?
Well, so, I mean, if you think it's about marijuana, it definitively links, and I can't wait for you to go for it so we can just go all in on it links and go to half on
that
consumption.
makes sense to me.
So does it involve just marijuana?
We'll see, I guess. The amendment treaty delay CP thing, this like Wodek dude, he's a director of like alcohol services at a hospital. Why should he talk about international drug treaties?
Let's see. Let me pull up Wodek here.
It's in the International Journal of Drug Policy.
That doesn't mean he has any expertise on drug trees. Okay, Patrick, where do you think this is like? So 2 years to go from enforcer to reformer, is that the line you'll defend for like why 2 years is key?
Yeah.
Okay, and then what else do I have? On this like neolib card, like Stelzer, who is Stelzer?
Stelzer is a fellow at some think tank. I cut that by a week or two ago.
Okay, and
senior fellow at the Hudson.
Okay, and
Institute.
why do you think this card is just like the success of China's state-run capitalism is an alternative model
Yeah,
of
because
corruption?
if
Like,
we were to
why-
break down cap and open up space for stuff,
where does this
the
say
Chinese?
the world is getting better? Just like some incomes increase for some people.
Yeah, that's a world getting better now claim. And it says that the alt would be China, which is a lot worse.
The alt would be China. Okay. Did you read anything below this like alt fails card on Neolin?
I marked a Rivetson at it's useless.
It's useless. Okay.
Which we'll defend.
Sure. What else do we have? Yeah, I'm good with that. 536. No, her cards are pretty well. Yeah. Did you all, Pappas, did you send deforestation?
I did.
Okay, so the impacts is left.
It's still alive.
Okay, so the impacts of the YC left on that advantage or innovation with the economy, aquaculture, food crisis, and deforestation.
Yeah. Yeah, almost positive. I'm not kidding. I'll do it.
230. Okay, we're good. 234.
Will you open it up on they're still running?
Okay. Yeah, 229.
Okay. Will you open it up on computer?
Sure. Are you on that?
Yeah.
I'm with you.
You didn't send it to me.
I don't think so.
That's not a big deal.
I might be able to just send this.
You just wait till it gets back to.
St. Louis Cardinals.
I'm so.
It's not fair of me to say this to you.
I mean, I already know about it. There was an article.
Just the emotional trauma.
Yeah, there was an article I saw. I forget when it was in. It was just like the Bears are going to suck for 4 years now, and I was just like, why?
Well, we're always on the NFC South.
With 4 instincts. I actually need to check on the score right for fantasy game. Oh. Yeah, I lost my fantasy.
You're 4-6, maybe you look like you would have been one of the greatest high school leaders.
The worst part about like the decline of Atlanta sports is that it's kind of coincided with the rise of Detroit sports. You know, they don't have like a World Series or anything, but they become consistent playoff contenders and everything. So everyone at school just like doubly shits on them for it.
The other terrible part about the decline in Atlanta sports is that
It wasn't that high.
That's sad.
The peak was when I was like, yeah.
Very, very. And then with this last is like recent kind of golden era, which like qualify for the playoffs.
Yeah. There's like a Forbes article that's like cities ranked in terms of sports misery. But the index isn't just being bad, it's like the degree to which you dash expectations. And then it was on top of that.
Just make the playoffs until top seed. You can't win the game. Some playoffs, like 12-4, and then lose like 7, like yeah. They'll probably make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Horrible stuff. I mean,
He's sending the doc right now.
Yeah, I feel unfair not to warn you because I'm in pretty good shape here.
Yeah, they're shape. I'm in really good shape over here. That I have flowing messages, but we don't have panels together, which happens like 8 times a month. But we decided that we could do boards now, so we wanted to start trying to manage it. So we can diversify a little bit. But that's really chaotic. We can't figure out anything else to compete about. I have no idea what I spent that.
It's on for it. I was open.
So Miles send it.
Yeah, he just.
Oh, cool.
This 4 a.m. decision deadline.
Generally, 13 is a block, right?
The order is the K and then the non-FDA. Like if I make those choices. All right, everyone good? All right, everybody good? Okay, cool.
The world's not getting better. Capitalism has resulted in increasing amount of aggregate death, structural violence, and ecological damage. Focus on flashpoints for economic or systemic factors make long-term violence inevitable. Carlson does well aggregate numbers of death, violence, and human rights. The black damage for violence essentially is caused by replacing this black damage to some good population by focusing on the disciplinary practice of refuse rate violence in the whole body. And pressure from areas that lead to attacking multiple capitalism usually have to do just the consequences of little economics of exponential increase in the and the gap of the wealth of the type of humanism for the consequences of civilization making it close to the narrative, the technology master structure, the essentially the number of people held, and force increasing the neurons of institutions to be focused on the humanism and the consequences of so based on our message on species, the critical use of the study of the research of the North Dakota that underlies the peaceful coexistence of humanity with nature. Inequality is deepening and expanding. None of the reasons why the world may be getting better have to do neoliberalism. Neoliberalism definitely makes it worse. Mark 2014, 2.2 million people living in poverty. The world is of these species are absolutely short of research. But the traditional world makes it possible to talk about these people in the world. The world is especially because of the people behind working people with permutation and stolen legalization of bodies, neoliberal states attempt to privatize all moral justice, political question, reform, entrenched status quo. That's a Juro evidence. It's never something that's not feeling figure peaking, so it's not going to based on competition. Firm, depoliticized the critique, tells 2011 sexual accommodation, the new liberal policy with some new life, as a means to show the people are going to be acting political accommodation, people and for certain accommodations of political leadership, built on moral model building specific on deglobalization, specific global march represents the president isolation invest in investors to add national transformation. We can see the one to link up into legalization marijuana results in a structural dispossession of growers because the land rents that will deliver cause massively low prices are indicates that turns their Afghanistan advantage. They can see the one to Juro impact up indicates which is logically not of all of their security tax and part indicates the state and neoliberal security and have incorporated kind of fundamentally destroying democracy in order to respond to that the state has to project its insecurities on the external world, which means their Afghanistan advantage cannot be viewed away from this lawful process by information or evidence indicates that this is the root cause of the war in Afghanistan, especially proven by the effect that Bill by Brown evidence indicates that the act is necessary to make the war the counterterrorism project ultimately succeed better. Or evidence indicates that just places broader questions why Afghanistan is unstable in the first place. For example, the line drawing the Green Line, etc. Via the process of colonialism, which means the broader ethical reflection of the creed is able to offer stable is a better choice capturing cause global food inequality, the reputation for crisis, just people and agri-corporations of the crops stop fucking the local farming system to prevent 2009. The food price suppression and the capitalist culture and monopolism will die on the foods in the world of economic the food prices, demonization, the food industry, the national farming schedule, the industry, medical capital, the industry, subsidy, the global strategy, or if I have to do for example, as our position is global to one of the foods in the last year, recommended for you to other experience hunger at the hardware parties or crowds and agriculture corporation versus something raised rights to demonstrate the contemporaries by country that have only had future months that are more than 100 all these have 1.5 hurting population not sure society when the world or principally reported by food and the affirmation of food rely on true neoliberal economism as measured for social well-being. This displaces structural peaking legitimizes colonial violence. You tell 2011 percent of the lacking some of the research on public research has allowed ability to go I figure as many that it's market signals universal measure and action information the accordance to government the president people trying to rise of the really records on the really market structure the political national and communist side of the invasion people local political subject rights under cerebral perspective organizations private people that are making business only have directions on such a from values must community interest in investors who are rendering the record relations on the colonial developments and not neo-colonial developments. And obviously they say there's no impact structural bonds. The alternative work here. The one is your evidence it's you should put the line yourself global youth purchase and object the asshole reform state bringing the critique positive in a different role as an educator rather than dropping the position of policymaker valuing the economic of immediate action. You coordinate your critical analysis the one is because the flawed system without from which the plan the plan the one I see stem the debate. This debate is alternative process for these way bringing the comments to the reality by creating critical vocabulary analysis to get highlight the link between neoliberals and our current political selling movements with global comments or possible standing step for their characterization with the alternate neoliberal ideology Barlow 2010. It is divergence in the movements in the new forming global government towards alternative law service for otherwise I have common heritage today abstract legal trade and studies social comments eradicating education healthcare social security augmented government space and level for current communities in the area harvesting this like national solid for human national world leader for green certified land the Indian supreme court protection natural lakes of the Canadian rise life the but our citizens but there's important new concepts which say the evils that's why the teams is every now and then history human rights they want to support evolution such times on one down side after you're going to be in the world news hustle not to settle for small and not to settle for small improvements the role of battles and interrogate the neoliberal method underpinning one of these sensible policy making sure all ethical political questions in favor out of neoliberal ideology. We said that extend the logic of the market industry as the framework or civil or attempt to neutralize methodological questions of the critique by abstracting the plan to the context. First, we straight education. The framework presumes that the law and plan can be viewed in vacuum. Its for foundation, which start legal discussion means private rights, question, substance. So concludes the plan focus is that trace that evidence only 10 mindset benign analysis can't the process by which the rich and losing is critical for keeping the entire. You want to see now? They say that the alternative is not able to solve because the statutory quantification is critical. Actually hammers innovation, which means you internal turn and solve all your arguments. Pilot 2009, the competition market motivates for investment in the absolute actually human is not really capital distributed as in pharmaceutical industries and make critical research that regulation can take one for research vaccine covered government nonprofit research to local DCA then recommend my country and cancer cells on without almost one this is not how I can develop the cancer and they want to develop choose long history critique of the anyone else would be the same the whole comes that has to be made better that we use all trivial deals as basic make collaboration muscle capital and the energy that's not just against the big corporations anyone who's forced to sign a concept confidentiality agreement means the all solves better college does not the government's the world of their that was used to turn developments in the world to world war with one national safety and capitalism on the US industry maps as well as help nutrition and first where the government was secure arbitration $100 short things to the atom of South one of the very 20% of the United States of bullshit so cultural backward though 100 decades strength on the super party was already the first element north of the States of the world and half dozen days so we have to find years now to happen in this time nuclear physics the exploration of chemistry I mark that card of chemistry and the apocalyptic imaginaries and affective device used to normalize neoliberal ideology and to mass annihilation as a political tool used to divorce individuals from their ethical responsibility to resist neoliberals and Juro to 2014 continued age your imagine the world imagine the capitalism the ideology of the 50s which neoliberals have produced and market ideals normalize the new ways to resist the people or insist capitalism driven by man also does not and will turn to the that every society for prosperity which will necessarily reinforce the neoliberalism produces identities committed to ruling institution for the matter that neoliberalism in the effort to create pedagogy but individuals with social responsibility and the individual in the therapy after the social contract and cycle trigger increasing same also more difficult to debate neoliberal legitimate. Case. Plan doesn't end the prohibitive approach that are trigger shift as a global limits. Obviously, no spill over U.S. marijuana legalization, international harm reduction, HASE, 2014 the Rock global warning, any change with the marijuana formulation, and power hard to condition harm reduction, Russia doesn't form an act around multi country compatible, no chance of spill over Gomez, 2014 the Rock policy making all the number of obstacles that is, and that's one country with the trees and how to control the high law first, which look like all trying to politically shift orders reform is has in are against the more aggressive drug policy concern, and nationally how to U.S. open ready for restore the loss of challenge. Okay, internationally, Canada, Canada, prohibition can be following tradition after the advocacy of laws international development and real and possible situation from you mentioned they their internal evidence and one of these all obviously got opium which means that if we win these the alternative if we win the plan spill over they cannot win any credible solvency argument no impact war escalation exercise best experts that the odds for escalation is 0 no for shocking American intervention there have been syndicates empirically didn't last well 70 escalated that'll solve right that 13 household writers and versus Germany more very little effective shot escalated lies for trying practices were a little political about them military has little saying about full burn the effective numbers by all the national election made that in such a military is how much more knowledge into the data is but to which we can throw like Marcus saying probably the live legislature with the broader escalation deterrence checks it GGR doesn't have the insurance needs the technology or the deterrence of the both their usability the index no unfortunately nuclear before the avoid nuclear has been successful in creating stability
might read one more according to yeah, back to the K.
Claims of inevitability or self-fulfilling university is the key side to resist for reformist fatalism, hating doesn't work in the height of the capitalism, and change driving behind this revelation, how statements are based on rational refusing the middle class, just like outright and the ability that enables radicals to more and internal to residual effect of the capitalism, close our imagination, education, memory, keep on transformative process, radical, actually on the Ukrainian alternative spaces and roads, reproducing our world, the local university, for imagining the different shape in the capital, ancient capital, and reproduction, yet this is also university also space for experimentation, resistance to be level, for radical imagination, forms of hand, the also imagination, with hierarchy and radical possibility revolutionary people with past generation radical struggle made instruments races legacies and instruments rationalizing today's categories and universalism that reproduces capitalism in the imagination as well materiality structural bonds causation synthesis eight many visible or separate other benefits that mass garbage transportation and aversion and racial discrimination
market racial discrimination.
So your Barlow says movements are super strong now, and what does the act do to prevent these movements that have cohered and can have the power to take down global cap?
No, it's not that there's like a universal monolithic movement that's coming out that's going to overthrow the system of capital. Our evidence indicates that commons are emerging in pockets throughout the globe, and that proves that resistance can be possible.
What does legalization of marijuana do that demobilizes those movements if those movements currently
Well, it demobilizes the movement towards the commons in this debate, and you can see that
what does it do about like a movement in Bolivia or Uruguay or wherever your eb says that the movements are happening?
Our argument is not like those movements are our alt. Our argument is that those movements prove our alt can be effective. We also conceded the link.
So my question is about the efficacy of those movements in causing political reform. How?
Our evidence actually indicates, like in Ecuador, they created the right to water by creating their rivers as a form of the commons.
Is there ever a claim that this spills up to change how the CSA changes things, or is this just it spills up to change capitalism and neolib broadly? I guess what's the solves the case claim, or is there one?
Well, like the solves the case claim is we read some cards. It's like we cause better innovation, and probably would like be a better way to solve your Afghanistan.
Okay, question about this Carlson card. It's explicitly critiquing Steven Pinker's liberal humanist blind spot. Why is this applicable to the 2AC's understanding of violence?
Why is our card that says the world is getting worse responsive to your card that says
well,
the world's
no,
getting
but
better?
it says it's based explicitly on Pinker's understanding of violence. It says based on his understanding of violence, here's all the shit that
yes, but his
wrong.
response to Pinker is based on a different set of empirical analysis. So the fact that he's responding to Pinker is kind of irrelevant for the warrants.
So what is the empirical analysis that Carlson uses
The
to make
aggregate
the
number of
determination?
deaths that are happening in the status quo. The
Okay,
level of
so
inequality.
aggregate battle deaths. Gotcha.
That's one. The level of inequality, ecological destruction, violation of human rights.
Senta structural violence causes extinction. What's the spill up claim? How does it cause extinction?
Oh, our evidence indicates it'll cause things like conflicts between the first and third world because of deepening inequality and environmental destruction.
Who fights who? What happens?
Like obviously our evidence doesn't say like this country will fight this country in X scenario, but our evidence indicates that neoliberalism locks in structural conditions that make life for the third world unlivable.
Okay.
And will
Question
never
about your
result in conflict.
framework arc. How do we determine whether or not your framework is ethical or effective?
I mean, like we'll debate about it.
Yeah, so I guess my question is like, what about your framework allows you to leverage offense that's distinct from the 1AC strategy?
You just have to rephrase that. I mean, we read Ev about this side of the university as being important, but
What's the university important for is my question. Why is it important? Okay,
It's
so
a site where we can imagine alternatives that may not be feasible.
Why does that mean we can't just imagine the AF? I guess my question is like, why is this mutually exclusive with the AF?
We're not going to like go for fiance illusory.
Okay, so we get to say our AF's a good idea.
Yeah, we're going to say like the alt's a better strategy and the impact is more
Yeah,
accessible.
fair enough.
Like, we're not going to be like,
Okay, well, one and
yeah, it's like it'll. I don't want to lie, but
Okay. Treaty DA politics, counterplan FDA then. Politics, FDA, treaty politics, counterplan FDA. Politics.
I just got to download the doc.
I'll take it.
Okay, everyone good? Okay, good.
Treaty day not going for I love fails because no offense in the space. Political politics not going for no penalties more no offense. Counterplan not going for permutation. Just test competition not had to reject argument not the team on solve the advocates or other things traditionality counter interpretation judge consider any German opportunity cost of the affidavit story cost about policy taking eliminate the negative one anti argument saying the advocates committed often kills cost and numbers be strategy force the 2EC to recognize argument interactions with good action against you want to see neg flex out ways to our persuasion given our members neg often especially with the new app substitute change new advantage we get to do whatever we want. D not a voting issue we cannot make debate impossible the FBI advantage the affirmative is not key agriculture is just doing fine right now. World Bank 14 meeting US and UK agriculture for create mutually advantage job and World Agriculture advantage agriculture all basically people with the money agriculture to community and you can build share about Atlantic salmon just mentioned by educating search the agriculture to me first time new species one case supporting both complex management and just really few healthy fits road made so first goal fresh reason and agriculture million there's no chance of food shortages the 2AC conceded our argument just entered no escalation which was not the one at claim it was Goklani which said food supplies are up in the squo don't allow for any new interest shortages are not going to occur. Growth does not solve war. Dress is fantastic. No reason to prevent conflict. Just gives militaries resources to attack. Econ collapse. Saps resources from aggression needs to be solved. Then to gain leaders negotiate settlement for version policy change. Oh, wait, economic situation, looking to improve worse situation pressure. Culture basically based whole around the U.S. store. No, can be economic that robust studies prove already Bomer to the conference for lower growth league economics 670 observation. That's vertical. Other making me unread these many cultures keep diversity such as Bosnia, Afghanistan, some of these remove power. They advance for news, but all the time Joe decline is key, undermines capacity to wage war, no transition wars. Duty 91 scenario. A major flaw becomes a economic stop just not really get part of that. That's what's going to stop research military diversity. Back to the question also is that nothing which rush. Two guys be relevant, holding dry. The fluctuation annual being without missing words, so reason. Basically, multiple legal wars, especially has to be a capacity to require from the car. Sure, plus 12, no nuclear winter, site 11 nuclear winter. Needs to be the Western one-dimensional they showed over aspect so provide aspect around the reduces fair to I keep growth with the work of the science and for lack of scientific technical so recently saw that called return to the winter question growth causes war decline, direct capacity of states fight increase military spending, explain above new that causes change that's chased before our models. It is correct. Answers their argument about Nord chased on power dynamic extension. Variety of research documents. The K-wave has been in operation for 2 centuries. There's been a cycle number of for your research test. Well, more like a turn out to K-wave states. I'm forced to do so in the words from time research where the K-wave meaning doctor and I just going different. And generally looking into roads and passing and set up centric result in outbreak full sales of high shear step. Taking sure collective suicides not occur. Warming does cause extinction. Their evidence does not come to grips with a 4 to 6 degree distinction that Holmgren says it does actually cause extinction. Warming's real outweighs newest evidence. Yearless 11 despite growing after many countries check on goals situation we get IBC said failure British mission next pilots to society food shortage revenue crisis falling island Massachusetts long language of the experiment clear science spoken diabetes and conversation all of here now warming's real epidemic constitution flow I hope that catch our politics world overwhelming scientific electronic plots correlations here to global temperature change overall majority of scientific communication agreeing with risk factors risk of passing internet human disease collapse now is guaranteed which makes all of their offense it's only a question of now or later this turns fisheries and forests Kings North and 9 George the terms that population CO2 exploitation of the fisheries destruction of forests water use and ratification of root causes of this is the same regulation in economy serious cash flow sale of not change the team on return to economic system time team about thousands of pounds not to drop coming up to look through all learn from class global economic class makes it impossible to finance the resource extraction products that lock in warming not past the tipping point Holmgren 13 and collapse credit they raise finance for emissions of tar sand sale shale and other extraction projects with selling emissions deflation trial behavior growth finance crowd making it possible to restructure climate and other drastic reduced emission argument managing the across the innovative humanity crisis now rather than later climate can be far worse on the economy conceded economic growth is unsustainable Shearman evidence from the bottom makes it impossible for them to win this debate U.S. is massively outpacing our the globe is massively outpacing the ecological constraints that exist which means it functionally means that they cannot possibly win any of their technological innovation arguments green capitalism still causes massive overshoot 13 we are overcoming everything forest minerals water agriculture science and cells that we consume research at the rate of 1.5 planets per year at half a rate nature of a bunch of planet world population one higher standard living and we need more planets of resources to provide research for China you consume like American Chinese will consume as much oil as the entire world consumes today 69% of oil next thing sort of means for the labor around the world oil research or being the planet would be largely exhausted text not sufficient Alexander 14 economies ecological consumer research and wait planet not the same by these as more formula was constant world exceed the long term left in the future 4 degrees technology top right any escape from bio physical limits to growth despite technological energy research continues to go systems careless single thing is not going to address the problem at all innovations tapped out tapped there and past 12 year assured innovation will sure depends on energy rates innovation changes 100% of blast you can write your printer that particle by right 2050 productivity innovation will time back to concentration less relevant possibility capacity increasing consumption outstrip efficiency gains in green technology Smith 14 actually we don't need that card okay. We need to keep emissions clean and form BPM. Well, is that the question? We switch from no power to Mars, not talk about fish, for minerals, freshwater, not top, pollution or garbage, fresh or pricing, intelligence, chemistry, cheap energy, which like trying to do incredible science and revolution, temperature, why growth in these suicide, works in 20% of the whole human right, water fisheries, reef, or wetlands, drylands, forest, a virgin class, people, funding research of the great forest, 5,000 humanities, current equipment, 1.5 you are to absorb the waste of 30% increase research, global research, expanded, read, there's no transition words that was explained above the people.
Yeah, read that, Alexander.
Okay, Alexander 14 existing development of non-time industrial civilization that's taking serious class would be most likely path of alternative life change price would rate them quite costly war nevertheless is the only way post was right. People I think the most smile forces to move forward industrial production and take on whatever distance human to price of exchange so that change the face goal price revision can force humanity to attract you to negotiate as wisely as possible. What do you want? Yes, there is going to be a mindship class forces in Alexander 14 deep crisis for revolution consciousness out of the space or a deep vision deep crisis world way that's the only way necessary mind to try and response for transition take rational planning deep crisis creates social support radical performance in the movie impossible to become politically socially inevitable post-growth paradigm is gaining critical mass now Alexander 14 fight the dominance of small dog for opposition of granting number strength causes anomalies increase the need for alternative becomes through a new paradigm quick radical paradigm system macroeconomic away from post-growth paradigm the fall anomalies are result with the gold paradigm post-growth paradigm shift progress shift in which process change of very nature what progress means.
Look at the time on that other right there.
You need to know. I can look at. Okay, I think I read all of them. I just moved to the bottom button. Okay. I mean, like, I think the best part on that is just. I narrowed it and or just moved things to the bottom and then everything else I read. I only moved one. Okay. It's in the top right. I'm really looking for my. Yeah. You open it up yet?
I don't know. I rolled off my purse. It's fine, right?
Of course you do. Yeah, I probably would do.
Okay, don't worry about it.
Yeah. All right. That's fine.
Yeah. I would just tell you want me to say
Are you?
That's I mean, like, there's this doc. So like, how many of those are must reads?
Strictly necessary to read that one.
That's like a minute right there.
Okay. This one, you don't have to read that one if you don't want to. Actually, just go to this. You don't need this.
I'm just gonna. All right. We've got 337.
Genre of game. Where's that?
Been said.
Definitely not the right deck.
Sorry, I sent the wrong attachment.
That's just sort of, this is a preview.
Alright, now the legit doc has been sent.
Yeah, got it.
That didn't work.
I guess that's. I'm gonna use that for
Yeah, I can. No, I mean, like really over. Really over.
Exactly. Like the satisfaction of crack the bowl.
Oh, my goodness.
These terrible ideas. Or just.
Alright, war on drugs, FDA, then the K.
Did you reset the right one?
Yeah.
It was just the second doc.
Yeah, just the second doc. All set?
Sorry, I'll put the order.
War on drugs, FDA, defeat.
Thank you.
All set?
No. Now I am.
We don't have to win. The U.S. immediately legalized this fact because they conceded our wild evidence, which says marijuana is a key issue for piecemeal from the spills under international institutions. Also proves the alt doesn't tough because it doesn't have a piecemeal mechanism that proves regulations are key against people who are public health model. They also know all of our evidence from the treaty so that proves that we galvanize the international consensus, but U.S. legal action is key there. The House evidence is about the science school of Colorado measures now responsive public health starts on Wednesday. Our evidence is we need to transition away from punitive models. All the evidence of treaties evidence proves that to our agreement evidence says marijuana market is key, and the answer is there's spillover arguments is balance is high now. That's over 11. So even though we're pulling out a counter narcotic strategy, we're still using it ineffectively, which means there'll be spillover balance. Here's where I'm like, yes, spillover hot and temporary notable feature of the regimes that root person of their sensitive maybe coming forward on the market includes the word of Latin American states of evidently the word for purposes of regime to be set back to review the Euro most special settlements 2016 spinach of all Libya and reforming or drugs regulated these represent important developments of countries have been reclassified drugs as public health issue and no back escalates their evidence issue or legal evidence is from last month. It says that diplomatic ties have been suspended in our traffic evidence says that the fear of people not fully negotiating settlement will create use of these pressures. It's no longer just rhetoric which their evidence assumes high risk of in Lemke 1112 that nuclear bombs from straight away from the following CWs are giving response to increase the change in these base, but it's lower than the threshold for conflict makes one plus one is using back assemblies to refer termination as well threshold for use and use, and if using something more than a statement, how conflict mirrors and can enable a first check process to substrate, uncertainty, lack of understanding, increase the conflict spot, and it's extremely managed to has bound to exchange all the possibility for new transition on the other flow. The S extinction, the robot came back to reply for the level of panel of science component, the latest thing out of the University of NASA, and our shared results from accepted degrees negative of the forest fires, unlike the nuclear winter is the 80s research with 11 nuclear war, will be lost affecting those temperatures and precipitation now. The other page at the top they concede working to biotech and all those things, which means we are the only possible scenario for a transition. However, we will concede all of their food defense, which takes out the links of the K as well, and most of their offense on this. We are key to overall economic resiliency. That is prioritating a transition and insulates us from instability stuff because our slow evidence says that pharmaceutical sector itself is unique. Their global economy evidence is not responsible to Tracy. Made a population go like, but they don't have an answer to either. Doesn't solve that now the economy, so we already have the resources to fight, which means that it doesn't apply. The Persian War also doesn't answer James Harvard. Strong evidence, which is more recent, that there's an innovative theory behind it. Our more evidence is that only equals a possibility for cooperation, which means that the transition will necessarily be valid as stats rose and economic activity. True reason the reason that's conflict against sponsored for this relations of and attempt to rather not the fire effect reasons we get more the use of links to use of force. The backsliding Trump center independence still predate the economic losses to democracy for global economics and China to distribution for resource release to peace and global disorder. Then come here, run for simple means in economic losses most force can become more likely to work at default very quickly now. They quickly nuclear winter stuff that was into the other flow there. Other key waves into it is by their north evidence. Their evidence is way too old on this. No impact warming or air evidence we will be able to adapt. Even if there's a consensus on warming, there's not a consensus on distinction. Proves we only need to get it below 4 degrees to solve environments resilient. No shipping points for even 12 ecologists. Grossly over 10 years within their to down for fractionation. These things once we now at least in distinction of all others demise. This species can be a calculation test has been extended in another area, which is counted no measurable like this work with now that's the review of the literature and 246 of the following major abundance of species as well as even in studies recover 72% of studies that nature surface only can recover rapidly. The most powerful disturbance of Russia about wildlife is 20% of the most consumed bacteria which are habitats we create. New ones there evidence on the rebound effect is BS Barrett 11 economics after land where we're trying to tingle everything is a good over avoid this by not trying to distinguish everything increase in energy consumption rare condition diseases by factors on related to efficiency without the efficiency much would much harder too much takes the over constant rebound effect it's not enough strips of land used makes a transition now since the transition failure home graded trainer evidence is all grossly unqualified desperation makes more likely means it'll be resource grabs and the reversion to less efficient technical sense code their outsider evidence sites their other athletes so there are other Arkansas there will also be mass and remarkable climbing solvent evidence that we are sufficiently sustainable to evidence extrapolate from sense code, which the point is that the tech is not anticipate that Smith evidence is on truth which how peer review should cover our studies. Also, growth of self-correcting alcohol glue 12 to recently the response of by environmental policies, but received little attention by economic analysis, even simple as optimal policies with sufficient readouts, technical negotiation for environmental necessities, possibly to be only temporary. Once the tech are defined to research reduction truth, governing intervention to get environmental goods to meet you without sacrificing growth. Now, the case step at the top group, the impact data cells are evidence, answers their aggregate this argument that aggregate deficits of bad work because population growth or Carlson evidence also lacks the definition of that. Although better studies, world's improving, but philosophy versus teaching, 10, 16, what is becoming a generally better place now. So great time to be an optimist score. Almost any metric you look at it is less confident. And then the one history number of people get disrupt 1,000 from poverty, but numbers start telling you struggling with poverty rates of all. And then every developing region market system has substantial incomes risen dramatically. And the environment the markets in the OECD countries have seen emissions of carbon in the past couple of years. Growth has been decoupled from carbon emissions. Countries can grow without any CO2. We also have the process of limiting the scientific species when it arrives at regulation for energy transit and alleviate climate change. We stand a good chance of getting through this without a catastrophic warming mark. Had warming now, now they don't solve it anyway. Filter all this people in sufficiency, then uniqueness or more evidence opening spaces, absolutely nothing of legal changes necessary. The margin evidence and qualified we control the only short term extinction there, which has the effectiveness of the all concede that the also mutual system of the perm debate proves that we are an impact to the framework argument the framework arguments are yes, we should get away the F-dogs and crossing new role of bats are and voter ratio and entrenched conditionality, which violates the ownership tradition in the world of balance to convey the pledge of competitive option, even if it's an alternative away in the plainest need any semblance of background. Now the alternative fails are after saying more evidence says that we control the result of their critical reflection without any statutory change. There will be certainty, which means that investors will be driven out. There are no movements coming in this time. So imagination is totally unfalsifiable. Don't float for a floating cap damage kind of play, because if you couldn't imagine it before you got the ballot, you probably won't be able to imagine it after the FTs keep correcting so their policy gap the alternatives of politicized money that drives out all investment, which means it's in effect of their apocalyptic imagery. They don't create uniqueness for it, and it's not true anyway. Apocalyptic imagery is key shots 12 that has an into the play makes the apocalypse on but it's about legal ignores how metaphor always gives race and equality. It's not it's used in action to the back of the response. That's why the institution creating the fund debate record not significant change. You can often skip the masters has to be that have to be one of the using the masters pliable legal source can be powerful to decrease circumstances by the risk of corruption image of penetration deconstruct how well connecting inaugurate a new world where most streets gather through the planet now they conceded the backlash to the alternative movements are effective because they're seen as too radical. Our evidence says we need a piecemeal approach right a statutory change in the status quo that's consistent with the true we see artists and evidence which says that critical reflection is not sufficient. World of institutional challenges are finishing down here artists and their changes to white system philosophical perspectives are compared reality to utopia prediction we might want to do away with neoliberal we all recognize the
little more broadly spent. One of the most successful projects of the next century is to break the myth of individualism. Our futures of life, we need to engage with the reality of neoliberal capitalism.
Much. Great. Yeah. So you kicked. So what impact are you going for?
So we're going for the general econ impact, all of the war on drugs flow, but none of the other stuff from pharma. So just econ from pharma, and then the whole war on drugs flow. But we still say we solve tech. We just say there's no terminal impact.
Yeah. Do you not more? Do you want more? Unless you do so.
Yeah, you just put together a new doc.
Yep.
I think Alice has it.
Stand?
Yeah.
Did you give an order already now?
No, I didn't. The K, the FDA advantage, and then the other advantage. Yeah, sorry, those are entirely messed up. I just labeled it as scale. All right, cool. Are we ready again?
The critique, we're not going to go over interpretation test competition on it, or they didn't intend it, but the role of the valid argument is a reason to reject the argument that the team is not a voting issue will answer the world getting better arguments here. Ace point. It's not because the new liberals are already cases try to medical technology and plan the clean water sector is not linked to new liberals in any way. We reject we reject marketization of all components of society, but not all progress, which is the evidence on the idea of baby's point. The EU should take a broader view of that status quo, resulting in a large number of active deaths from the board, environmental destruction, the colonial bounds, etc. Our evidence also increase that indicate that oceans are being destroyed at which turns one to see impact of Martin.
Most of this next question, the environment stuff, which we're going to get more on the data, which I'll do now. Okay,
At the top, we conceded their aquaculture impact, which was a biodiversity impact, which means that the debate is over because the affirmative cannot read environment resilient evidence when they are reading environment impacts in the 1AC, which means if we win the direction of the link arrows, it is try or die absolutely negative, and they cannot play any defense of that argument. They have conceded the argument that if we win, the collapse is structurally inevitable, makes all of their offense level already today are able to get to make transition wars worse in the long term because people will be truly fighting for these the final amount of resources as opposed to the relative sustainability that you fostered and will collapse the set level line by line. They said another line B. They say food defense, etc. They conceded that we conceded their food impact. We read a card in the 2 and the 1 in R that we conceded their food impact. Our card in the 1 R indicates that it causes massive amounts of food shortages. It causes massive amounts of food shortages, ultimately escalates to company stack. And they say now the war debate agreement. We turn the evidence indicates that economic climate staff and military resources available for college governments indicates it's far more likely to turn inward or from their evidence to the war and the royal evidence, which only diversion and conflict indicates that those who prove deny our evidence has a robust statistical study that their evidence doesn't have any shit on our junior evidence indicates that cooperation is more likely because it's net better for all the people. They conceded 3 pieces of alternative evidence on the critique that indicates the global comments are emerging in the status quo, which means that the propensity for global collaborative framework is high. They also conceded the evidence that indicates that collapse of capitalism will lead to better form of cooperation and innovation, which means that all these war arguments beg the question of those war arguments beg the question of those arguments. And now they say they read the sulfur. Now they read the sulfur evidence that the base question of whether we win sustainability or evidence indicates that it's totally unsustainable because the amount of resources that the earth can fundamentally be consumed is collapsing. Even if they win, the resources are not finite. Our evidence indicates that the amount of outputs that the earth can tolerate, i.e. the amount of pollution that can go to the atmosphere before it cannot regenerate itself, the amount of pollution that can go to rivers, etc., is being exceeded by 1.5 times the earth's capacity to regenerate it, which means they just try or die. They cannot win in either. Growth from the environmental arguments. We win uniqueness on the environmental arguments indicates that 60% of fisheries are being cleaned out of the forests are being ravaged, etc. We are the only ones with the card that indicates this will cause extinction, even if they get their nuclear winter card in the 1AR doesn't actually say that it will cause doesn't actually say that it will cause extinction. Arguments against it's based off of bad science and faulty models. And if we win a risk of the environment debate, it's try or die with cast outweigh because there's the impact is the billions and billions and billions of future lives, which means if we win a 0.01% of risk of the direction of the link of the environment debate, this chart negative and all their arguments are fundamentally irrelevant. Now they say the environment is really Smith evidence that I extended above it indicates this it's resilient up to a point, but once we see this once we see it's the carrying capacity is no longer resilient because it cannot regenerate itself as well. All their evidence indicates their Chivion evidence says that the environment is not resilient, which means they cannot read that card. They conceded a straight turn to the case, which means it is impossible for them to win through the they say no rebound effect. Air conditioning happened that didn't lead to an increase in consumption. It indicates the technological innovation in relation to like green technology and stuff ultimately leads to an increase in demand of aggregate consumption, which ultimately makes that increase, which means that efficiency gains, etc. caused by growth are ultimately outstripped by production. Our evidence is so much better on this question type. All of the empirical examples, their evidence is from citing one example that is absolutely atrocious. They say that our evidence of qualified home goodness environmental studies has educated environmental studies relatively qualified Wikipedia page. Alexander is actually, I'm pretty sure, is like PhD as a professor, or something they think something like that. Their authors are no more qualified, and the awards that we are making outweigh their generic complaints that are change reference indicates that in the future that the complexity means that the innovation we can get from technology is inevitably decreasing. The conceded argument by the 1AR, which means that even if past innovation has been able to solve the impact, it will be decreased in the future. Carbon testing empirics indicates that every now the transition debate group, they were not really great on this. In the 1AR, Alexander evidence indicates in times of global economic crisis, they can open up space for a new form of economic order to emerge. Our evidence is fantastic. It indicates that post-2008 crisis, there's not the credit available in the financial system to be able to re-stimulate the economy like we did in 2008. And the faith in the system is lost, which means that if there is a crisis, it will open up space for alternatives. Look, their card in the 1AC doesn't say the growth cost cooperation says that the U.S. leverages it to crack other people up and able to cause war. James 14, the prepares to the global war costs and fight options and just level by the board of the institutions, other states, whether national or the United States, but not others. Explicitly political logic. We're not going to go for the warming impact necessarily, but all of our environment arguments are independent of it because oceans, biodiversity, ecological services, soil, forests, etc. Those are all entirely distinct from warming, and that's all we have to win.
Self-correcting economy.
Yeah, they say the economy is self-correcting. This evidence doesn't assume the increases in efficiency are offset by production or complexity. Evidence answers that. This evidence just has absolutely zero warrants and doesn't answer any of our warrants. Our evidence is just so much better than theirs on all of these questions. And they conceded all of the mindset shift arguments. Great. Arm reduction. The plan doesn't end the prohibitive approach or trigger a mindset shift. Cocaine is the key to solving, but there is no way that any other country around the world even determine decriminalize soon. That's our download evidence countries around the world like Russia, China, etc. won't sign on a broader reform outside of marijuana, which is crucial to solve. That's our hostile Gomez 7 prohibition in states popular in Africa, which outweighs U.S. influence. Conceded Gomez means zero risk. The wild evidence sounds good, but think about it logically. Why would the hell would Russia give in? Just because the U.S. legalized their ILO terms don't help them because that doesn't prove that they actually solve cocaine and prohibition is flawed. No one impact escalation and cites best experts indicates the odds is zero for escalation due to no for striking American interventionism. Document says that no change stable collapse with vigilance, hostile rhetoric. Nothing more than that. They're right. That's right. That's the right evidence, which is recent enough, says the recent tensions are all just talking never escalated. Not even close to exceeding 2009. The concept of people in combat company in fact, the 90% of the range down 3% back then described lots of human black world without resulting in the impact population. Can I get those two cards?
Yeah, sorry. Kind of forgot. Or you can move that one.
Okay, the second one, Senate, not the Senate.
Yeah, just it's the blue. It's the blue test.
You emailed it? Okay, let me pull that up and then I'll, we had 337.
Yeah.
What about that James thing?
I just
That's your card.
Oh.
And we just emailed that to you.
It's the blue.
It's the blue on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, good. There's some. You should draft this card. I don't know what called to. This one's for the setting, totally separate settings. And also, there's no impact on the it's just straight. I think that's your waste of time. We should definitely practice. And nearly everything will over the space. Just waste of time. Okay. Just like all the cards.
Still missing set. Okay, war on drugs, the K, the other advantage. Short-term Pakistani nuclear war outweighs and causes extinction in the short term and flips all of their triad calculus, which is what much of us be able to come down to in the first place. The ace one is that tensions are escalating with status quo, which was we decisively control time frame. They conceded the 1 year left key evidence, which negates there's been a recent change in nuclear posture about use of TMWs to increase the risk of accidental or miscalculation because of nuclear exchange with short circuits. Most of their defense, since they have no defense and miscalculation or accidents, and ensures a short-term nuclear winner and ensures extinction at the very least, even if it doesn't. And they have conceded the claim that it draws in other great powers as well, and it causes billions and billions of deaths, irrespective of whether or not we win. That it causes complete and total extinction. Beast point is that this overwhelmingly shreds the environment and proves that even if they win, that they solve the environment or might solve the environment. The existence of this war happens before economic collapse from pharma, which turns their ability for them to successfully access any alternative and flips the triad argument. Because if a war from Afghanistan happens first, it turns the effectiveness of that overall transition. The internal link to the economy is based on pharma decline. Yes, we said it caused extinction. We didn't say when it caused extinction. And the one I see is based on overall resiliency, which takes a long time to break down. The existence of a time frame argument proves that the existence of the war makes the transition feasible. Means they can't solve the final argument for this Indo-Pak war stuff is that it turns the claim for overall movements because they would grab for resources, etc., make those movements ineffective. The existence of a war means those movements can't cohere, and it does nothing to solve overall de-development. Finally, as intervening actors are sufficient to solve the Barrett evidence and against the technological innovation, we would figure shit out about biodiversity. But the thing that no intervening actor can check is the escalation of a short-term Indo-Pak war or Riedel evidence, and again, no actor can fill in. There's no Clinton-style figure that can do that in the status quo, which means intervening actors only solve their scenario. And this argument by itself short circuits the logic of triad I, which is the only thing they are banking on. The first 2 argument deals with the overall solvency claim. This is an evidentiary question. The 2 was exceedingly blippy, so you shouldn't read into much of the evidence. The ace one is that the current signal of international law is insufficient in the status quo. The wild evidence says that we export a global signal, and our evidence is about the U.S. leadership in the regime. Their evidence is all about the status quo. Wild says that a piecemeal approach would change Russia and China's mind on the overall strategy, even if we don't spill over to cocaine. And the overall punitive approach with Kari evidence says that the switch to the harms reduction model is sufficient to solve the Haas evidence and Gomez evidence about broader shooting from. They haven't answered the 1 year evidence, which is fantastic on the propensity for reforms occurring in the status quo, but that depends on the success of whether or not the United States legalizes overall marijuana. All of the cards on the counterplan and treaties page established that prior legalization is important for doing that. The Enders evidence is from 2002 is terrible. Doesn't assume a recent change in Pakistani nuclear doctrine, which was all explained above. The no state collapse was literally just the words no state collapse, and the 2 don't read too much in to the Brown evidence, and it gets to decrease the incentive of the Pakistani military to respond to a particular conflict. It decreases the resolve and ensures that inevitable terrorist attacks would escalate, which proves that our scenario is necessarily distinct. It does cause extinction. The Farnsworth evidence isn't based on Robach and Tune. It's based on a consensus of studies which says it blots out the ozone, causes a nuclear winter, destroys overall agriculture, and royally screws over the environment in the short term, which means if we win this occurs first, it blocks the overall transition. Now the K page, box star, do whatever you have to for the Zine and 1016 card, because it proves that it is not tried for them. Our evidence says that growth has recently decoupled from carbon emissions, and that economies can grow without needing more CO2, which takes out the logic of their triad icons, because it says this will radically transform the overall energy landscape. They have conceded the claim that fusion is coming in the status quo that will provide limitless power, and it's the equivalent of overall de-development. The world might not be perfect, but it says that the current actions are sufficient, which means only a short-term war can wreck things like fusion, which are inevitably coming in the status quo. It means only we access a scenario for extinction. The rest of this aggregate violence movement stuff, they don't have uniqueness for it, because they have no way that those movements solve in. They shred the movements in the first place. Now the other page, triad doesn't make any sense. One is because we haven't made an argument about innovation. The thesis of innovation is quite simple. We don't know when innovation will happen, which the existence of that innovation flips triad decisively affirmative in this question. The Barrett evidence says intervening actors are capable of solving, but the reverse is not true in this particular. Said the reverse is not true in this particular scenario. Also, you should not try because if you involve in a movement and that movement inevitably fails because it causes extinction, it means that they're trying is ultimately a futile exercise which short circuits much of this logic and proves you should prioritize the deaths of billions or extinction in your short-term impact of this. Now, there's a risk of a short-term war. The ACE point is they've conceded consensus of statistics. Their evidence results in the 90s and 2000s. The Royal evidence says broad statistical consensus and says there's a rally around the flag effect. Beast win is Tilford. They have zero answer, and it says fragile democracies would crumble. There would be no reciprocal trade. There would be a breakdown of interdependence, and the world would devolve very quickly. The most evidence says that one nuclear exchange is sufficient to cause overall extinction. The piece of 1AC James evidence, which they have recharacterized just about a 1914 style overall economic decline, which is sufficient to block the overall transition. Now the rest of the environment stuff, I'm going to spend the rest of the time here. But remember, when you're making your decision, that we access a war before they solve environmental collapse, and all of the other arguments I made proves it's not tried for the neg, and that they result in a transition that is ineffective, futile, and does nothing. The Dresner evidence we have read explicitly answers all of the Marcotte evidence. Says that globalization results in overall economic cooperation also as it pertains to the environment. So it results in overall cooperation and getting other countries on board to solve a host of environmental problems. The 2AC evidence says we are past the tipping point, and this is really the kicker for the broader environment stuff. It says if tomorrow there were no more emissions, if tomorrow there were no more impacts on biodiversity, that would simply no longer matter because we're already so far past the tipping point that DDEV is not capable of solving that argument. The rebound evidence from the 1AR says that technological innovation is sufficient to solve. Anything else I'm going to say, Alice?
Author indicts and cap adapts, which their ed doesn't.
Yeah. All of our evidence says that capitalism is surprisingly resilient. The Arbitzen evidence and against the movements are so strong. Our movements would do nothing. Capitalism has been empirically resilient. Short-term war, so much worse. All of the arguments I made proves there's no try or die. Extinction happens now. Seems pretty clear to vote F. I don't know. It's like a pretty damn good ballot.
Send the one air doc after this, so you can get it.
Oh boy. Wow, it's 1 in the morning?
Way faster than some.
One of the things, like, see the
argument. Which one was it? Which one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the other?
Yeah.
Would you just unplug someone from this thing? Arjun, can we unplug you?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's an open one here.
All right, super.
Yeah, just double check that works.
I just let's watch it. Yeah, I just included that. That one is. Oh yeah. And then yeah.
That's what I did. No, that's fine. Yeah. It was a hit. Yeah. And it was comfortable. It was the most comfortable having.
Oh my goodness, not much.
Wait, so you got this song or turn the?
No, I've got it right here. It's just because I want to keep learning.
That would require.
Really?
Oh, yeah. To get everything so also.
I think it's good. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
All right, I just sent an arrow off.
Go for it.
What about the same?
Who's gonna start cleaning?
Or actually, yeah.
Like you said, like tilt towards the judge. Bait.
Where's all the?
Yeah, I never answered that. But
Yeah, you've been a little busy last week.
It's huge. You got it invested?
Weird highlight thing for this document.
Let me see.
By weird, I mean highlights.
Oh, that would be.
It's nighttime. Cool.
Yeah, I just did a nice yellow highlighting. You can use my computer as like a.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Just tried to retell the story of our interaction. I don't even think
Love that.
Is it okay if we don't have problems?
Just any, yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you, appreciate it. Do you want to?
Yeah, that's great. Hey,
Yeah.
we're good. Thank you.
What's our time here?
Richard, just find us at 10, it's cool.
It was downstairs.
Oh, okay, I should go back and you're like.
So for 2 hours now, so you just have another hour.
I'm gonna tell you like last day, which stuff.
You can say you got 5 minutes, I can do that. Get that coffee.
No, what? No, shut up, I'm not.
It's like Sean level. Better be safe than sorry. Yeah, if they're not like open still, I have more in my room, so just let me know.
You're in T-7 hours. I know. That's like, wait, you're like thinking 2 hours.
Yeah, it's taking like $120 cab ride to the airport.
Yeah, 2 hours.
And
Oh.
It's like another city.
No, I'm not sure.
I think we recorded them. Yeah, what is this soda? So intriguing.
I know, it's like it's searching out soda, actually. Adult soda.
Multi-happy soda.
You're just gonna have to start smoking more. It's the thing. Oh, I think that's rolling right.
You guys are smoking.
No, that's what we use ours for. You kind of have to peel off the sticker in the middle, which they don't do anymore. We used to get like shit stuck in it. It's like a sticker.
You should ask. Is that still recording? Yeah. But it's. Is there sound?
Why?
Yeah, I don't know how to.
Is there a balance for this?
Is it right that Justin said he gave it to you? Did not go on the rest? Okay. I'll go look for a balance. See, you ready to do it? Write it down as I'm looking now. Okay. 30 minutes. Go Dairy Queen quickly.
wanted to ensure that it's
QT. I'm so close.
Love it. So close as I'm just looking at it everybody.
I am going to look over my photos one more time. And then run to the back. So 2, 3.
No. So everyone in the world to share that. Cool. Oh my goodness, you Snapchat me.
That's when it comes down.
Fucking careful, isn't it?
You
Do
sure?
not say anything intentional.
I'm intentionality. I think that's for sure.
Where's that? Where's the Snapchat chat.
Daddy. He went to the bathroom. I saw him when I was.
I'll take it back. I'll give you, so again, get back.
Okay, well, okay, there we go. I thought literally right as the enough just crashed, and I was like, I can't right now. Literally got to the end.
Wouldn't that just be fitting though for your week? Just like, you have no notice of what should give your RV from.
Forget we're doing it live.
No fucking
there. I never seen that. Is there anyone besides Seth who's now here that we are missing? Okay. Okay, since we have everyone, I will commence with the reading of the ballots.
Thanks, Dr. P.
Somebody look over his shoulder.
Love it. Yeah.
Let them give their decisions one by one.
It's right, shut the fuck up.
Gonna do it right. Not gonna get it wrong.
I can double check you if you want to.
Okay, in the 2014 Franklin R. Shirley Classic, is a 3-2 decision.
Oh.
For the negative for Northwestern. So for those of you all that haven't heard the stories from Wake about Ross, I'm going to tell a Ross story. I don't normally tell a bunch of Ross stories. I'm telling one right now. So this trophy, Ross used to bring to the squad meeting, and he would constantly read the number of times Northwestern had won the tournament and then berate us about how few times we had won the Northwestern tournament. And so it was sort of a way he would inspire the squad to try to do better. So last year, after Northwestern won, someone remarked that Arjun had been a part of the team winning 3 years in a row. And I said right then and there, if he does it again, and this is not to take away from Miles, but if he does it again, that would be unprecedented, that one debater would have won the Franklin R. Shirley 4 times. So we are officially renaming the trophy after Arjun, no joke. So the Franklin R. Shirley Classic trophy will have engraved on the front of it either Arjun or his full name, depending on how big it is. To be honest with you, that is an incredible feat. So a round of applause for So it's kind of late, but I'm sure some people want to do some talking. So if you'd like to.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so I think that there's a high risk of the miscount component of the Afghanistan advantage. I think that they're winning. It happens in a fast time frame because of high alert status, which maybe flips try or die. I think that you are winning some reduction because of deterrence, being able to solve a conflict, but I don't necessarily think that answers the miscount component of their Afghanistan advantage. I think that this just is like so damn close, and so I could have probably missed something because it's late, but I think that a lot of your cards on the solvency component of it, whether or not legalization spills over, are A, not about Afghanistan, and B, don't assume that international pressure internal link that a lot of their cards are talking about, that the US market is key, that the CSA would be able to resolve some of the legal debacles that occur in the international treaties regime. That means that it could probably change something that would maybe spill over to Afghanistan. And so I think that they have a decent risk of the advantage, that none of those solvency components really do much to reduce it. But I do think it solves maybe, calculated escalation, but maybe not miscalc. And I don't necessarily know. I kind of comb the 2NR. I think if you have an answer to miscalc, I actually am probably switching mine. I just didn't have it. And that's not to say it wasn't there, but I felt that the way that you prioritized in the 2NR was like very sort of blippy and fast at the end of the India stuff. So I think maybe inverting what you talk about, doing their offense first, might clear some of that up for me and make it a little bit faster. But ultimately, I wish that there was also a time frame component to the 2NR, like aggressively, because I sort of think that the 2AR framing to me is very, very persuasive. They have that like Rydell card or whatever, that conflict likely now card about Indo-Pac is like pretty good. It's like Pakistan high alert, diplomatic channels are all failing, all of these things are collapsing now that lead to sort of a scenario where a conflict could be likely. And so I think in light of that, I'm thinking that there's going to be a big war pretty much in the short term that I don't necessarily know that I think I'm definitely dead before I'm worried about the environment, which is sort of like the framing of my entire decision. And I think that, yeah, a time frame component would be massively helpful. I looked at the nuke winter debate to see whether or not it rose to the level of extinction. I think that their cards are pretty good. I think that you all should re-underline your Farnsworth card, because I even think it's talking about like India and Pakistan and none of the underlining of that aft. But I think it says that new studies prove that even a limited nuclear war would be enough to cause enough soot to go into the atmosphere, which means I may be concerned about the environment. And so I think that there's a risk that short-term war turns your environment scenario, which means I don't really think about too much of the environment stuff because I'm more worried about the time frame component.
Yeah, I agree with what we had said about the impact advantage. The miscalc argument I didn't really think was answered. I thought that miscalc would occur in a crisis. I thought they had an extinction level claim there. Agreed, dead before the environment. Some stuff that gave me pause in the environment is the growth stable or not. I don't know. I'm going back and forth. When will fusion be here? The evidence is like from 2012. Seems like their 2014 Alexander evidence would assume any advances in fusion technology. Resources are still really unstable despite those tech advances, but their evidence isn't that good. Your evidence, it does say limitless clean energy fusion, radical transformation. Maybe their Alexander evidence doesn't take it to account. So I don't know, I kind of thought there was low risk for the environment too.
When you finished the 2AR saying that was a nice half ballot, I went into my decision thinking that there was going to be enough advantage to do it. What ends up happening, and I just think that, I think kicking down to just biodiversity did the neg a big favor. It would have been there anyway, but I just saw it so clearly. I mean, I just think I end up concluding overwhelmingly that, first of all, it's an absolute extinction thing based on your card, which just as a technical move clarifies a lot for me. And I think I end up concluding fairly overwhelmingly, although the ultimate debate is very close, fairly overwhelmingly that we're past the carrying capacity of not only the resources and species and forests and the pollution we're putting into it, so inputs and outputs. And I think that perhaps growth is sustainable in its own terms of growing and the economy will keep going, but ultimately there just isn't enough stuff alive on the planet to do it, and that causes extinction according to that impact card. The advantage, I think the Rydell card is excellent. I don't think there's a lot of defense at the internal link thing. I was not very happy about the nuclear winter thing because there's just not a lot of debate, like studies. The 2NR, like the majority of the words he says about it almost are this new card, although he clearly accepts studies. But it does throw it into a little bit of doubt for me. In part because their cards say, I don't really know neither side's cards. Am I very clear, other than just one set of studies says one thing, one set of studies says another thing. But I know that their thing is so definitely everything. And although I think, Pappas, in the 2AR, you do a great job of speaking to try or die in terms of trying can be a mistake and that the advantage interrupts try or die. I don't think the framework is contested of if everyone's going to die. The ultimate logic of try or die, which I don't think kicks in very often, in this case seems to. Their Alexander card really speaks to our silly try or die debate concept of like, it is so absolutely hopeless that it's the only way out, any chance of a hope. I think I think solvency for the advantage is not great. I think solvency for the transition might be as bad or even slightly more dubious. With my own I think their cards on it are very good. I think my own personal skepticism doesn't love it, but I just think absolute extinction versus less than that. We're just too far gone. Innovate. The problem with innovation, there are two big problems. One is consumption outpaces it, and two is that the AF cards I think are quite good. That tech shows up and we don't expect it, and it really can save our ass. But it doesn't quite speak to how, how do I know what to expect? And I think this isn't as good as consumption outpaces it, but the neg cards are pretty on point, saying the cycles, we should not be optimistic about innovation. And I just think we're so far gone. So it's late and I'm meandering. I have I took forever typing up a ton of things that I'm going to put into real prose and send to you. But I think that's the big picture, and happy to answer questions about little things. I just thought like that 2AR thing, and then I worked through the flows and worked myself past it.
Just the one question I have is,
Yeah.
Does the extinction stuff really matter if we win, then a war turns transition?
Well, I struggled with that, and the problem I had is, war turns transition, which I don't ever get a whole lot more than that, and that makes perfect sense to me. I certainly think it turns transition if it is this kind of catastrophic global event, which their impact defense cards say it might even be a relatively minor event on the subcontinent, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but it says sort of the studies say so. Put another way, I think that is a really good transition, no solvency argument. I don't know if it really makes sense if the climatic effects don't get beyond the subcontinent, because people might go about their business. But I also thought that, if anything, it's a really good solvency argument that just pushes me farther into the try or die is the only way. And I know time frame complicates that, but if I'm just not sure it's going to kill everybody, and I think it might even stay, if I just am not sure that the suit in Ash is going to do all of it, yes, I understand how it disturbs the transition. And yes, if it does reach extinction or anything close to it, obviously it stops the transition. But I'm first skeptical of that. And second of all, I could go into the 90-some% and be struggling with how extinct we're going to be environment. The technical concession of the impact card and winning the environmental sustainability and innovation stuff. And it's just like that impact card is like written for, we're beyond all the species, we're beyond all the resources. I should shut up.
Agree. I think a couple things. I think they're winning several environmental scenarios that are external to the warming stuff. I think that the description of sustainability in the 2AR, especially in relation to the environment fusion, this stuff it doesn't come to grips with things external to warming, especially. So I agree. You extend warming's inevitable. I think that's true. I don't think either team is able to resolve warming problems. But I think there's several external try or die scenarios that those things can't come to grip with. I think I was perhaps more persuaded by the solvency for transition than Seth was. I think the structural argument that I don't have an answer to in the 2AR is credit. The credit argument is impossible to rebuild because of a lack of credit due to economic collapse. And the war turns transition argument didn't make sense to me in that sense, because it seemed to me that the war and the destruction of that infrastructure would further that material argument about the possibility of rebuilding. I was also fairly persuaded broadly by just the weight of evidence they had about groups shifting away from these sorts of things now. And if that's kind of just broadly true, there's a backstop argument that there are a lot of people who care about that stuff. So I thought the transition debate was fairly well in their favor. Now that said, I also agree with Leah that I do think that after the 2AR, I thought there actually wasn't going to be that high of a risk of the Afghanistan advantage. But I read the Ev, and I think you're right. And a lot of the stuff made more sense to me, I think, once I put those pieces together. So I do think that you went a fairly high risk of Afghanistan, but I agree with Seth that there's some risk that it's not existential. And I think they're the external scenarios outside of warming and the ability to resolve those things are more persuasive to me. I would try or die. I also have a bunch of stuff about how I read all the EV and that business. If you want me to send you that, but
Yeah, I don't have much to add except that I'll say that I thought on the Afghanistan advantage, I thought their cards lined up a little bit to the point where I consider the solvency question about whether or not you spill over to harm reduction and whatnot. I think that it rose to the threshold of like reduce the risk of your advantage. I mainly focused on the existential nature of it, use some of their generic impact defense, so maybe it wouldn't be like full out Pakistan, India would launch every one of their weapons because diplomats or U.S. intervention would have intervened, and then they have this like oddly conclusive card that Seth talked about. But then there was also this like Gomez card about that spoke more specifically about the politics than your cards that kind of spoke more aspirationally. I think you could have debated the solvency a little bit better in the 2AR to get around this, but I just thought the Gomez card was the best one on speaking about the particular politics, naming the countries, naming their concerns, etc. And I thought that merited a reduction in risk as well. But I viewed the DDoS stuff the same way as Seth and Bill.
Thanks for doing
Of course.
detail this later.
Hey Miles, what's the one thing nobody talked about in this decision? The like econ leads to war debate. You scrap a lot of that section of the 2NR and get the advantage with more time, and you're in a much better position. So we don't think there's such a high risk of disadvantage.
Why in the 2NR I didn't believe in external offensive.
No, but I really think that you spend less time on that section of it. It's just like the environment's the only thing on that. They're going to war impact they're going to go for is a short time frame one. That's the one you need answers to. And that's time with that. If you're winning transition, you're going to answer all these like war arguments anyway. Then that's not true. So, yep.
Thank you. Makes sense.
Just mirroring you.
Should we take some pictures?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta get one with you. If it's gonna be named after, I'll take all.
I can tell
Okay.
Do it.
Did I not tell you this?